Hogwarts, The Return of Turmoil. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 326 The Old Witch at the Stadium. Come to the stadium. Maureen clenched his fists. How dare that old witch sneak in so brazenly? Are you sure you didn't make a mistake? Maureen stood outside the rest area and looked around the stadium. Magatha held a magic magnifying glass and kept observing the various wizard audiences. She nodded seriously. I didn't make a mistake. She is somewhere here. Maureen tore a page from Magatha's notebook, rolled it up, and then tapped it with his wand to turn it into a telescope. Then he used the telescope to look for people in the audience. But this kind of telescope made by magic has only the simplest function, which is similar to the telescope of a Muggle. The distance it can see is also limited. It is far less clear than the magic telescope used in astronomy class. The real magic telescope can focus freely. Even the freckles on someone's face 1 kilometer away can be seen clearly. Some high-quality magic telescopes can also cross obstacles and actively search for the target in their mind. Maureen didn't care about magic telescopes before. Now he really hopes that he can bring an astronomical telescope, so that he can find it faster. Can't you calculate the exact location? Maureen put down the telescope and asked. Magatha calculated on the paper for a long time, and the expression on her face became more and more puzzled. It's very strange. She seems to let me calculate it on purpose, but she also used a little trick to prevent me from calculating the exact location. She is really amazing. The arithmetic magic she used is something I haven't learned yet. If Professor Victor was here, maybe he would calculate the location of this old witch. She let you calculate it on purpose. Maureen was shocked. The old witch with no front teeth and wrinkles on her face like a pile of mud actually let Magatha calculate it on purpose? What exactly does she want to do? Maureen picked up the telescope and looked at the audience. Although there were not many spectators at the scene, there were more than 1,000 or 2,000 people. It should be a simple thing to find an old witch with a hunched back and half a foot in the coffin from these 1,000 or 2,000 people. But he glanced over and didn't find any trace of the old witch. What about Lucas? Is he here too? Maureen asked again. Magatha turned to a new page and started calculating again. The notebook was gradually filled with complex formulas that Maureen could not understand. After calculating for a minute, he shook his head again. I don't know. I still can't figure out Lucas. There's a fog around him and I can't even see his appearance clearly. Professor Kane walked quickly towards the two of them from behind and said angrily, What's wrong with you two? I told you not to disappear under my nose. The game is about to start. What are you dawdling here for? Old witch. Professor. Magatha said nervously, the old witch is coming to catch Maureen. What old witch? Professor Kane didn't react for a while. It's the old witch who wants to catch Maureen. He's here. Magatha emphasized. Professor Kane remembered what Maureen and Magatha had just said about a powerful arithmetic fortune teller, and became a little alert. Are you sure? After saying this, Professor Kane took out a telescope from his pocket. This telescope was very small. Maureen recognized it as a magic telescope of the Chwinayangian brand. In the last astronomy class, Professor Sinistra also introduced this high-definition identification and 360-degree no-dead-angle telescope. Professor Kane had prepared one in order to see the performance of the contestants clearly in this competition. I only saw an old lady wearing a green jacket and a wig. Oh, I can also see her magic hairspray. Professor Kane handed the telescope to Maureen and pointed to the stands behind on the left. Can you see if it's her? This so-called 360-degree no-dead-angle Chwinayangian telescope is really amazing. Professor Kane was staring at the front just now, but he could see the audience seats behind without even turning his head. It's not her. The old witch in the opera house has lost all her teeth. Maureen shook her head. The old woman that Professor Kane saw didn't have that many wrinkles and had green dentures in her mouth. Although Maureen didn't understand the fashion of wizards now, it was definitely not this old woman. With the help of Professor Kane's magic telescope, he searched the audience again. This telescope was very powerful. Everyone could see the appearance and behavior of all the audience at a glance. Unfortunately, Maureen didn't find the old witch. By the way, Professor Kane motioned Maureen to return the telescope to him. How dare that person come to this place? This is an event held by the Ministry of Magic. How dare she come? I don't know, Professor, but I just calculated her. She is somewhere here and will definitely come to take Maureen away. I can't let Maureen be taken away. Maureen is mine, Magatha said angrily. Looking at her expression, she wanted to run to the old witch and fight with her, telling the old witch that Maureen was her exclusive research test subject and no one else could touch her. Professor Kane looked at Magatha with a headache. Maureen was somewhat helpless with Magatha. The old witch was unlikely to come to arrest him, otherwise she would have taken action in the Muggle Opera House just now. She came here most likely to see what was so special about Maureen as an invisible man. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. The most hateful thing is that this old witch deliberately let Magatha calculate it, as if she was teasing them. However, at this time, the referee had already blew the whistle, and the third round of the competition had officially begun. It was time for the 8 contestants to go on stage. Professor Kane said quickly, Maureen, don't think too much. It doesn't matter if that person is here. I will watch you. Don't worry. The judges here are all members of the Ministry of Magic's Academic Research Society. Their transfiguration skills are very advanced. The old witch you mentioned would not dare to do anything wrong. You should focus on the competition first. Competition? What competition? Oh, yes, there is also a competition. Maureen was no longer in the mood to compete. All he could think about now was how to find the old witch, and then let the staff of the Ministry of Magic capture her and ask her what she and Lucas were planning. But Professor Kane still urged Maureen to go up. Maureen, listen to me and concentrate. Your opponent is Constance. Even if you can't beat her, you have to take it seriously. Serious children are the cutest. Hurry up. Professor Kane comforted, I will watch you from below this time. If something goes wrong, I will rush up and grab you. According to Magatha, you are her research subject. Professor Kane said this just to reassure Maureen. In fact, there are many referee wizards with superb transfiguration skills in the audience, so there is no need to worry about anything. Maureen still held Professor Kane's magic telescope and searched around unwillingly. This magic telescope could penetrate the entire stadium, and even the wires buried in the walls of the Muggle stadium could be seen clearly. However, there were many places that could not be seen, such as toilets, restaurant tents, etc., which were protected by the Ministry of Magic. Even the cloud-piercing arrow telescope could not see them. But there was only one most suspicious hiding place. Maureen quickly locked onto that place. Chapter 327 Can I Give Up? Durmstrang's Lounge. Since there was no trace of the old witch in the audience seats of the entire stadium, then the old witch must be hiding there. Maureen's telescope has landed on Durmstrang's rest phone booth. Lucas and Raffle secretly met, and the old witch suddenly appeared in the stadium. Durmstrang's Lounge must be the most suspicious. Unfortunately, he couldn't confirm this. The telephone booth lounges of the 3 schools were key magical protection places. In order to prevent the secrets of their own schools from being leaked, the lounges could not be peeped into by this kind of penetrating magic. Durmstrang's Lounge, Professor. Maureen said very confidently, the old witch's hiding place can't be found in the entire stadium, so only Durmstrang's Lounge is the most likely. Magatha also reacted and nodded desperately, yes, Professor. Durmstrang's telephone booth must be there. You should tell the staff of the Ministry of Magic and let them search. Catch the old witch, so Maureen will be safe. Magatha now attaches great importance to Maureen's safety. What nonsense are you two talking about? Professor Kane said seriously, we at Hogwarts asked the Ministry of Magic to search Durmstrang's common room. If there is no evidence, and we fail to catch them, you know we will be criticized, right? If they catch them, it will be fine. If not, then Hogwarts will certainly be criticized beyond recognition by those wizard conspirators. The headline of tomorrow's Daily Prophet will definitely be the fall of Hogwarts. Hogwarts resorted to dishonorable means to defeat Durmstrang in the Dumbledore Cup Transfiguration competition. For the sake of selling the news, those wizard reporters can write anything. In addition, this is a competition held to commemorate Dumbledore, one of the greatest headmasters of Hogwarts. Hogwarts has not made it into the top 3 in this competition for 3 consecutive years. In recent years, it has been smeared by the Daily Prophet. When this news is reported, the reputation of Hogwarts will be further damaged. Professor Kane, standing on the school's standpoint, naturally cannot agree to this. But Magatha wanted to argue, but Professor Kane stopped her. Magatha, if you can figure out what I'm worried about, then you should understand how ridiculous this matter is. Professor Kane said seriously, without definite evidence, I can't just question people casually. Magatha was a little unwilling. She knew what Professor Kane was thinking, and she also knew that Professor Kane's concerns were reasonable. And Maureen seemed to have figured out how Ralph and Lucas left the gymnasium. If he guessed correctly, it was the paintings. The paintings in the distribution room. He remembered that Magatha said that Ralph and Lucas disappeared into a wall, and when he saw the wall, he didn't find anything unusual, but there were several circuit diagrams and Muggle electricity safety posters. He now has a bold idea. What if that is not a Muggle propaganda poster, but a painting by Payangad? Okay, Maureen, Constance has already gone up, you should hurry up too. Professor Kane saw that Maureen was still searching for the target, so he forcibly took Maureen's telescope and said, Constance's task is to turn the cornerstone into a round table. Your task is to turn the cornerstone into a beaver. I think you should be able to transform into a beaver. I remember that you have transformed into this kind of animal before. Professor, can I give up? Maureen interrupted Professor Kane. What? Professor Kane was stunned for a moment. Give up. He had never heard of anyone giving up at this juncture. You must know that the gold content of the Dumbledore Cup certificate is very high, otherwise it would not attract so many wizard headhunters to come and watch. Those who can get a place in the Dumbledore Cup competition must be very outstanding in transfiguration. All contestants want to perform well. Only in this way can they be qualified to discuss treatment with those wizard headhunters when they graduate in the future. Maureen is the first person who wants to give up in the transfiguration competition. I'm really not in the mood to compete. Maureen touched his forehead. Let Constance win. He planned to go to the switch room first to confirm whether the painting was actually Payang's magic, and then he and Magatha would cast a few search spells throughout the stadium to find the old witch. If possible, he would find a way to check in the lounge at Durmstrang. As long as he was sure that the old witch was still there, he could directly send a signal to notify the people at the Ministry of Magic. In this way, Professor Kane's worries would no longer exist. Not in the mood to compete. Professor Kane was a little stunned. This restless child really gave him a headache. At this juncture, he actually said that he was not in the mood to compete? Maureen, do you know what the Dumbledore Cup competition means? Professor Kane advised earnestly. So many wizard headhunters are waiting to dig up potential stocks. You should cherish every opportunity to play. Even if your opponent is stronger than you, you should respect him and not give up easily. Professor, wizard headhunting has nothing to do with me. I'm only in the second year, and I'm still a long way from graduation. Maureen said indifferently. Professor Kane realized Maureen's age at this time. He almost forgot this point. You know, the average age of students participating in the Dumbledore Cup competition is mainly 6th and 7th grades. They are facing the problem of graduation and work, so they will attach great importance to the ranking of this kind of competition. But Maureen is the youngest among all the contestants. He still has 5 years to graduate. Hey, you are right. The latest novels are first published in the 6th and 9th book bar. Professor Kane was somewhat helpless. In fact, he had always wanted to know how much Maureen's real transformation level was. When Maureen competed for the first time, he focused on Pearson and ignored Maureen. Professor Kane pondered for a moment. If Maureen gave up, then Constance would be promoted, and it would not be a loss for Hogwarts. After all, one of them was destined to be eliminated. Maureen, you go on stage first. If you want to give up, just stand on the stage for a few minutes. After Constance successfully transforms the cornerstone, he will be the winner. Professor Kane no longer forced Maureen and could only compromise. He said, it's a formality. At least it's respectful to the opponent. You have always been a polite child. You can't be less polite at this time. Maureen thought about it. The requirement for winning the game is to transform the cornerstone into something specific. It only takes 1 minute to transform the cornerstone. As long as Maureen doesn't interfere with Constance and lets Constance transform the cornerstone, then he will come down. It won't take too long. Okay. Maureen turned and ran towards the stage. He wanted to go to the stage to finish the game, and then he could concentrate on finding the old witch. I will continue to count. Magatha shouted from behind. I won't let you get caught. I really don't know what this kid is thinking. Professor Kane sighed. He had no way to deal with Maureen's decision, but this decision was good for Hogwarts. If Constance advanced, then this year Hogwarts still had a great chance of getting into the top 3. Chapter 328 Waiver. Constance was already waiting for him on stage number 4. Maureen hurried up and looked around the audience without even looking at Constance. He was now in everyone's sight, and the old witch was most likely watching him from somewhere. Constance saw Maureen's nonchalant look, narrowed her eyes, and snorted indifferently. Round 3, Stage 4, Hogwarts vs. Hogwarts, Transfiguration Contest, start. The referee shouted. Constance straightened her chest, hugged her chest with both hands, holding the magic wand in her hand, and did not take the initiative to attack. Instead, she said, "Since both of us are contestants from Hogwarts, I won't say much. Just use your transfiguration to attack me, no matter what means you use. As the president, if I defeat you directly, others will say that I am merciless. I plan to give you 5 minutes. Within 5 minutes, I will only defend and not attack, so that you can understand the gap between the two of us. Where are you?" Maureen was still looking around. He was wondering in which corner of the audience this lifeless old witch would be hiding and spying on him. Once he saw the hunched figure, he would immediately approach over and kick her hard in the muddy face to catch her off guard. Yes, that's it. Forget about respecting elders, just kick her first. Hurry up, hurry up. Maureen held the magic wand. His mind was not on Constance at all, nor did he care about the cornerstone and the 4 stones used for transformation on the stage. He felt that the purpose of the old witch coming to this place was most likely to see what he was good at and figure out the characteristics of his magic, but Maureen did not intend to let her succeed. "You can start." Constance waved his magic wand, controlled one of the stones, and said arrogantly, "I asked you to use 3 stones, I only need to use 1. He was absolutely confident that he could defeat Maureen with only 1 stone. Constance wanted Maureen to take the initiative to attack, and he would defend, and wait until Maureen attacked until he was exhausted and had no other choice. Then he would defeat Maureen and let Maureen understand how big the gap between him and himself was. But Constance said a lot of confident words, but it was like playing the lute to a cow, and Maureen looked very anxious. "Hurry up!" Maureen shouted at Constance. "What?" Constance frowned. "I said hurry up," Maureen repeated eagerly. He wanted to run down now. If the old witch was watching him in the dark, it would be unwise for him to stand here for too long. "What do you mean?" Constance asked coldly. "Hurry up and transform that cornerstone." Maureen said impatiently, "I give up. You will represent Hogwarts in the next game." "Give up." Constance was slightly stunned, thinking that he had heard it wrong. "You are so nervous so soon." Yes, whatever you say. Hurry up and transform your cornerstone," Maureen urged again. Constance was a little annoyed. He didn't expect Maureen to say such a thing. He pondered for a moment and snorted again. "Are you planning to sneak attack me while I am transforming the cornerstone? If so, I can tell you that this little trick is useless to me." My God. He won without fighting, why is he still talking so much nonsense? Maureen said impatiently, "Hurry up, since it's useless to you, what are you afraid of?" Constance stared at Maureen angrily. He thought about it carefully and found that Maureen was right. He was not worried about this situation. Even if Maureen wanted to use some tricks, he was confident that he would react and fight back at that time. It would be more than enough. "It seems that you are still very self-aware and know your own strengths and weaknesses. This is good, so that I won't be accused of bullying the weak when I attack you." Constance raised his wand and aimed at the cornerstone. While transforming the cornerstone, he looked at Maureen vigilantly to prevent Maureen from making a sneak attack. The process of transforming the cornerstone takes 1 minute. 1 minute is not long or short. Constance is still wary of Maureen who can trap Pearson. But Maureen was still looking around and had no intention of stopping Constance. What is this kid doing? Is he plotting a conspiracy? Constance became more and more confused. Only the referee could hear what Constance and Maureen said. The other spectators all focused their attention on the number 3 stage, where Zimmerman was more attractive than here, and the transfiguration contest between Zimmerman and Erdo had already begun. Many wizards shouted enthusiastically, and most of the wizard headhunters kept staring at Zimmerman, wanting to see how powerful this talented young man was. Maureen stood right in front of the number 3 stage, and could see the game between Zimmerman and Erdo on the number 3 stage. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Zimmerman stood there without any expression, nor did he mock or provoke Erdo, nor did he take the initiative to attack. His eyes were calm, neither sad nor happy, as if he didn't care about the game at all. Erdo had already waved his wand at the beginning of the game, and pulled off 4 stones used for attack to his side before Zimmerman did. Erdo was also an expert in transfiguration at Hogwarts. When he performed transfiguration on stones, it was remarkable and no flaws could be found. Facing Zimmerman, who won the first place in last year's competition, Erdo never underestimated him and launched the strongest attack right from the start. After grabbing 4 transfiguration stones, he immediately turned one of the stones into a ferocious black coyote. The coyote let out a low roar, leaped suddenly, and pounced on Zimmerman. At the same time, Erdo's second transfiguration stone broke directly and turned into countless broken stones. The broken stones floated in the air for a while, and soon turned into a group of black bees. The dense bees scattered all at once and turned into several clusters, surrounding Zimmerman from different directions. Erdo's third transfiguration stone turned directly into a plate of loose sand, which fell on the ground and quickly spread across the entire stage. He kept the fourth transfiguration stone by his side just in case. In just 10 seconds, Erdo had transformed 3 transfiguration stones into different things. This level of transfiguration was quite advanced, with skillful techniques and a level far beyond that of ordinary students. Erdo's control of transfiguration made many wizards nod their heads secretly. This student from Hogwarts was indeed worthy of their attention. But they still wanted to see Zimmerman's performance. After all, Zimmerman was the focus of the whole game. But Zimmerman suddenly did something that no one expected at this time. He didn't care about the coyote that pounced on him, nor did he care about the dangerous bees, nor did he care about the flowing sand on the ground. He didn't seem to care about Erdo at all, ignoring all the dangers, and just turned around and looked at the number 4 stage. Maureen was looking around, looking for the whereabouts of the old witch. When he accidentally glanced at the number 3 stage, he happened to meet Zimmerman's eyes. At this time, Zimmerman suddenly showed a strange smile at the corner of his mouth. Chapter 329. See the smoke monster again. Maureen was slightly stunned. When Zimmerman smiled, a strange feeling suddenly rose in his heart. He didn't know Zimmerman before. Even when Zimmerman easily defeated Pearson and others, Maureen didn't care much. At most, he just looked at this man twice and had a general impression. But when Erdo attacked Zimmerman, Zimmerman ignored Erdo and turned to look at Maureen in front of everyone, showing a very strange smile. This smile made Maureen feel very bad. Many spectators were also stunned. Who would have thought that Zimmerman would do such a thing? He turned his back to Erdo. Was he looking down on his opponent? This was really arrogant. At this time, Erdo's transformed coyotes and bees had blocked Zimmerman's retreat, and the entire stage was covered with sand. Even if Zimmerman could apparate to another place on the stage, Erdo would immediately use sand to attack Zimmerman. But Zimmerman had no intention of apparating to avoid it. He shook the wand in his hand slightly, and the coyotes and bees that pounced on him, as well as all the sand on the ground, all stopped, as if time had suddenly stopped. Erdo opened his eyes wide, and a trace of panic appeared in his eyes. Others didn't know what happened, but only he understood that it was not time that stopped, but that he had lost control of the coyotes, bees, and sand in just a moment. The magic level of depriving him of his transformed objects was quite terrifying, and it was far beyond his imagination. Crash! All the coyotes and bees shattered and turned into yellow sand all over the sky. These sands quickly gathered together like flowing water, spinning rapidly, and condensed into a figure. This figure was made up of sand all over his body, and looked like he was wearing a wizard's robe. The lines were floating and unstable, as if they would be scattered if a stone was thrown. He wore a wizard's hat, and there were no specific facial features on his face. Maureen's pupils shrank suddenly. He recognized the figure. When Inran was captured, a black smoke rolled out. At that time, the black smoke turned into this figure. But the figure at that time was made of black smoke, while the figure in front of him was condensed from yellow sand. Although he did not have the purple eyes of the black smoke monster, he had a very clear symbol on his forehead. It was a triangle with a circle on each side of the triangle. This symbol was exactly the same as the symbol on the forehead of the smoke monster that Maureen saw in the Forbidden Forest. Maureen was very shocked. Zimmerman turned around and controlled Erdo's deformed creature, and then condensed this figure with sand. It was obviously specially shown to Maureen. But why? Why did Zimmerman condense this figure? What did he mean? Could it be that he had also seen the smoke monster in the Forbidden Forest? Zimmerman smiled strangely again, and shook his wand again. He didn't even look at Erdo. The figure condensed from the dust suddenly turned around and rushed towards Erdo. Before Erdo could react, He was hit by the dust figure. The dust wrapped Erdo and turned him into a stone statue condensed from the dust. And the stone statue is exactly the same as the figure just now. The whole audience was in an uproar. No one expected Zimmerman's transfiguration to be so powerful. He didn't even look at Erdo in Hogwarts, but directly controlled the other party. This level of transformation made them admire. It seems that except for Maureen, no one knows what the figure is. Everyone seems to regard this figure as a very advanced transfiguration of Zimmerman. And this is indeed a normal sand and dust transfiguration. Anyone who has a little level of transfiguration can make the sand condense into this kind of figure. It is not difficult. Not to mention other people, even Maureen can do this. But his ability to do this is obviously different from Zimmerman's. Zimmerman must know what this figure means. From Zimmerman turning around to look at Maureen, to snatching control of the shapeshifter, and then controlling Erdo, the whole process was done in one go, in less than 5 seconds. In just these 5 seconds, Maureen's heart was already in turmoil. Zimmerman was still looking at Maureen, with a teasing smile on his lips, as if waiting for something. What's going on? Maureen's heart had long been filled with various mysteries. Who exactly is Zimmerman? Why did he deliberately transform the sand into that figure, and especially for him to see? Maureen even had an even more horrifying thought in his mind, recalling what Magatha said about the old witch coming to the stadium, but they couldn't find it. Could it be Zimmerman was the old witch who drank the Polyjuice potion in disguise? But, is this possible? You should know that the Ministry of Magic takes the matter of Polyjuice potion seriously. In order to prevent some adult wizards from drinking Polyjuice potion to disguise themselves as students in order to win the Transfiguration Championship, the Ministry of Magic Academic Research Association has already made various restrictions on the competition stage. Before the competition, Maureen heard from Professor Kane that this kind of competition stage has a very powerful set of anti-cheating magic, including washing away any disguise of Polyjuice potion, preventing the result of the competition from being calculated in advance by arithmetic fortune tellers, etc. Any magic that will interfere with the fairness of the competition will not work on this special competition stage. There is no doubt that the people of the Ministry of Magic Academic Research Association are not ordinary people. They can foresee this. The latest novel is first published on the 6th-9th book bar. Although the old witch can use arithmetic fortune-telling magic to become invisible in front of Magatha, Magatha is only a 5th grade student and her magic level is still lacking. Among all the referees present, there are some very powerful wizards who are much stronger than Magatha. It is unlikely that the old witch can hide from the elites of these associations. If Zimmerman is not the old witch in disguise, he must know something, and it is very likely that he knows what the explosions in the Forbidden Forest mean. Maureen probably has figured out the purpose of showing this figure. Zimmerman is telling him that if he wants to know the answer, come to him in the next game. Maureen's eyes became extremely solemn. He glanced at Constance, who was still transforming the cornerstone, then waved his wand and threw a stone at Constance, interrupting Constance. Constance had been paying attention to Maureen. When Maureen threw the stone at him, he had already interrupted the transformation. With a flick of his wand, he threw the stone away from Maureen. I knew you wanted to play tricks. Constance sneered. He was very satisfied with his reaction. He thought he had seen through Maureen a long time ago and knew that Maureen would do this. He was a little proud in his heart. This time he had a better excuse to attack Maureen. Sorry, I really wanted to give up and let you win. Maureen looked at Zimmerman again and said seriously, but I have to change my mind. He held the wand horizontally, and the wand drew a fiery breath in the air. Chapter 330 Victory. Constance and Pearson have the same personality. Because they have a higher talent for magic than others, they have always been looked up to by their peers. When Professor Kane and Professor Flitwick said that Maureen had a higher talent, they both refused to accept it. Pearson had suffered at the hands of Maureen, but Constance had not really fought with Maureen. He heard what Maureen said and smiled contemptuously. It seems that you can defeat me by using these tricks. Professor Kane has always asked me to take care of you, but I have never liked you very much. You were right to choose to give up, so that at least you can suffer less. But Maureen didn't want to talk nonsense with Constance anymore. He waved his wand directly, and the 4 stones spun violently in the air and hit Constance at an extremely fast speed. Constance also raised his wand, and he cast a delay spell, and then wanted to take away the control of the 4 stones. In his opinion, even if Maureen took away the control of the 4 transfiguration stones, it would be more than enough for him to take it back. But Constance soon found out that he was wrong. He couldn't control the 4 deformed stones controlled by Maureen. At this time, the stones had already fallen in front of him. He could only approach to another corner of the stage. But when he just appeared, the ground suddenly became extremely muddy. Maureen had already turned the entire stage into a swamp. He sank in. Constance was a little surprised and angry. He didn't expect Maureen to be so fast. When he was about to cast magic to remove the swamp magic, several vines suddenly stretched out from the swamp and firmly grasped his feet. Then the 4 stones broke into dust and filled Constance. Constance was annoyed. He was blocked by the dust and didn't know where Maureen was. Split into pieces. Constance cut off the vines under his feet, and then turned the swamp under his feet back to solid ground. He raised his wand and aimed at the flying dust. Disappear. The dust was still flying, with no sign of dispersing. Constance was a little surprised. The sand seemed to be trapped by a strange wind. When his spell acted on the sand, the wind immediately rolled out a hole, making his spell unable to hit the sand. But Constance was not a pushover. He swung his wand and a spring of clear water turned into mist, covering the sand and dust, wrapping all the sand. Then he cast a freezing spell to control all the sand. Humph, I finally took control of the sand. It's my turn next. Constance swung his wand quickly, pulling the ice chips. All the sand was condensed into pieces of stone. He sneered, what else do you have? Just use it. If you can trap me, I'll count. Hogwarts, Maureen Walker, wins. Before Constance finished speaking, the referee had already called out the result. What? Constance was shocked. He saw the beaver behind Maureen. Maureen had already transformed the cornerstone into a beaver at some point. As long as the cornerstone was transformed successfully, the game would be over. Constance's face turned extremely pale. He never thought that Maureen would actually attack the cornerstone at the beginning. Those sandstorms and swamps were just delaying time. Although they couldn't trap him, they caused him a lot of trouble. When he got rid of these troubles, Maureen's cornerstone had already been transformed. Maureen stood on the stage, not looking at Constance, but staring at Zimmerman. There was only this guy in his mind. No matter what, he had to figure this out. Zimmerman was also watching Maureen the whole time. He had also won the game. After seeing Maureen win, he walked down the stage and walked towards the Durmstrang lounge. Maureen walked back to Professor Kane silently. Professor Kane had been paying attention to Maureen the whole time. When he saw Maureen change his mind, he was also quite surprised. When he saw Maureen win, he was even more delighted. I didn't expect that Maureen's transfiguration was so powerful. His timing was so perfect that Constance was delayed for a long time. I didn't expect that you actually beat Constance. Professor Kane exclaimed. Professor, there's something wrong with Zimmerman. Maureen didn't feel happy after defeating Constance. He didn't care much about this kind of competition. Now he just wanted to let Professor Kane know about it. It doesn't matter. Zimmerman will be in the next round or the next round. But you really surprised me. I don't understand when you mastered these magics. Professor, my business is not important. Maureen lowered his voice, looked around, and pulled Professor Kane to the lounge. After making sure that the old witch couldn't monitor him, he said, did you see the figure that Zimmerman made out of sand just now? Oh, I saw it. I watched all your games. What's wrong? Professor Kane asked with a smile on his face. That figure, Zimmerman deliberately conjured that figure in front of me. Do you remember the smoke monster I talked about with you when I went to the Forbidden Forest to rescue Unran? Maureen said solemnly, the smoke monster I saw was the same as the wizard figure that Zimmerman conjured out of sand. Professor Kane put away his smile and said in surprise, are you sure? The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Yes, it's exactly the same. That Zimmerman deliberately showed it to me. He must know something. Maybe he's Lucas or the old witch in disguise. I don't know. But this matter is definitely not simple. Maureen said. But it's impossible. That race stage. Magatha had followed from just now, and when she heard this, she was about to refute Maureen's words. I know there are some restrictions on the competition stage, but what if Lucas has some powerful black magic item that can hide these? I heard that when the Goblet of Fire was held before, the Goblet of Fire was interfered with by someone, right? At that time, it was still under the eyes of Mr. Dumbledore. What if Lucas also has this ability? Maureen said seriously. Professor Kane opened his mouth, hesitant and uneasy. The interference of the Goblet of Fire led to the resurrection of Voldemort. This matter is not a secret in the wizarding world. If there is a powerful confusion spell that interferes with the anti-cheating magic of the competition stage, it is not impossible. But Maureen's idea is still too incredible and a little hard to accept. Maureen, your guess is possible. If there is no evidence, we can't suspect that the opponent's player is someone else's impersonation. Professor Kane hesitated. It seems that except for Maureen, no one in the audience at the scene thought of what the human figure condensed by Zimmerman with sand represented. Everyone just regarded the human figure as an ordinary wizard's shadow. Basically, many people can do this with sand, and no one thought much about it. I know, Professor. Maureen said in a deep voice. He just wanted to let Professor Kane know so that he could be careful. As for whether Zimmerman was someone else pretending to be him, he didn't care much. He just wanted to know what the other person knew. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 331, The Fourth Round. Maureen and Magatha had been thinking about going to the power distribution room to confirm whether the painting was from PNG, but they were stopped by Professor Kane. You two can't mess around anymore, Maureen. Now that you have defeated Constance and entered the top 4, you should prepare well for the next game. Professor Kane didn't want to cause any more trouble. He couldn't let Maureen run around all the time. Not to mention the dangers that Maureen would encounter every time he ran around. When Maureen ran, Magatha would definitely follow him. If something went wrong, it would be a problem for both of them. Magatha was the kind of person who would do anything for the sake of exploration. She didn't care much about criticism and only liked to study magic knowledge that she didn't understand, such as Maureen. Maureen would make trouble from time to time. Even if Professor Kane had a good temper, he couldn't let Maureen make any mistakes at this juncture. Okay, Professor. Maureen gave up the idea temporarily. He didn't want to make Professor Kane worry all the time. I'll follow Maureen. Magatha looked serious. That's right. Professor Kane was relieved. He was afraid of these two restless children. This year, the strength of Hogwarts School has finally improved greatly. Webbery has also entered the top 4. He defeated Cecilia from Boxburton School who performed well last year. Now Hogwarts has 2 of the top 4 contestants, which means that we can finally have someone in the top 3 this year. Professor Kane was very happy with this result. In his opinion, the fact that Maureen ran around at noon was not a big deal. He was a little worried and said, I hope that when we draw lots next time, we can draw a good lot and don't let Webbery and Maureen be drawn together. Professor Kane was more worried about this. Maureen had been drawn together with Constance in the last competition. Now that there are 4 people drawing lots, the chance that Maureen will meet Webbery again is very high. Professor, look at it openly. The competition decides the top 3, which is not such a bad thing. If we meet, Hogwarts will definitely get the 2nd place this year. Webbery said with a smile. 4 people were divided into 2 groups. They drew lots to select their opponents. The winners of the 2 groups entered the next round to compete for the 1st and 2nd place, and the 2 losers also entered the next round to compete for the 3rd place. So if Webbery and Maureen met, the winner would occupy one of the top 2 places, and the loser would have a chance to compete for the 3rd place. But if they didn't meet, if they both lost, then at most one of them would be the 3rd place. Therefore, it was more advantageous for Maureen and Webbery to meet each other, which basically meant that one of them would at least get the 2nd place. Webbery stretched his body, moved closer to Maureen, and said happily, Great, man, Constance was defeated by you, haha. I can imagine the scene when he sees you in the club in the future, maybe he will eat you alive. Are you looking for death, Webbery? Constance shouted angrily. Webbery was a person who spoke without thinking. When he said this, Constance was beside him. After being said by Webbery, his face was so dark that water could be squeezed out. Oh, sorry, I forgot you could hear me. Webbery smiled and spread his hands. I really don't know if he did it on purpose or not. He likes to poke other people's pain from time to time. It's a miracle that such a person can still walk safely until now. Professor Kane is also quite a headache for Webbery. People who speak without thinking are easy to be beaten. But he is obviously used to Webbery's careless temperament. No one can do anything to him. After resting in the lounge for half an hour, it was already past 5 in the evening. The sunset began to set, and the clouds in the sky were burned red by the sun, as if they were on fire. The dark dusk gradually fell, but the enthusiasm of the entire stadium was getting higher and higher, because the 4 strongest players began to compete for the top 3. The strong confrontation must be much more exciting than the Transfiguration contest, where the 2 wielded machetes to hack and chop. A whistle for assembly sounded, and the referee began to notify the contestants from the 3 schools to go on stage. Cheer up! Professor Kane looked at Webbery and Maureen with great energy. He was not worried about Webbery, who laughed heartily all day long and was full of energy. Maureen, on the other hand, remained silent in the corner. Although the opponent is very strong, it is not impossible for us to win the championship. Professor Kane was proud of this year's results, because this was the best result in 3 years. In the past, no one had ever been able to enter the top 3 in the Dumbledore Cup. He could not help but look at Maureen twice more. He was not surprised by Webbery's performance, because he knew Webbery quite well, but Maureen, the rising star, really surprised him. Don't worry, Professor. Webbery laughed. We will try to bring the lost Dumbledore home. Can you speak? Professor Kane had prepared an exciting speech, but it was all disrupted by Webbery. He glared at Webbery unhappily. We haven't made it into the top 3 for 3 years, and haven't won Dumbledore's first place trophy for 5 years. This year we must bring Dumbledore's trophy back to school. Let the spirit of Headmaster Dumbledore be passed down in our Hogwarts with justification. The latest novels are first published on the 6th book bar. That's what I mean. Webbery said with a chuckle, but you're a professor, whatever you say is what it is. Professor Kane shook his head helplessly, looked at the grinning Webbery, and then looked at Maureen, who was indifferent to the game. He always felt unsure. If Pearson or Constance made it to the semifinals, Professor Kane might be more relieved. After all, they both really wanted to win and took the competition seriously. But when he thought of the inexplicable arrogance of Pearson and Constance, Professor Kane felt that they were not as good as Webbery and Maureen, who did not take the competition seriously at all. After being disturbed by Webbery, Professor Kane could not say anything inspiring, so he simply waved his hand and said, "Let's go. This year's Dumbledore Cup must be ours." Everyone left the telephone booth and walked towards the contestant area. Maureen followed Professor Kane. Although Professor Kane could not be sure whether Maureen's words were right, he thought that it was right to stay closer to Maureen anyway. When they left, the people from Durmstrang opened the door. Raffles smiled and nodded to Professor Kane, and Professor Kane also nodded with a calm expression. But everyone knew that this was just a greeting. They were still competitors, and they were eager for their students to defeat each other's students. When Maureen was looking at the students at Durmstrang, Zimmerman turned his head and looked at Maureen. Maureen's eyes met Zimmerman's in the air. He wanted to see something from Zimmerman's eyes, but Zimmerman smiled strangely and looked away. Who are you? Maureen was full of doubts. Chapter 332 Drawing Lots. Professor Kane noticed that Maureen was looking at Zimmerman, so he put his hand on Maureen's shoulder and signaled Maureen not to worry too much. Don't think too much, Professor Kane said. I'm watching him. If anything happens, I will immediately notify the referee to suspend the game. Everyone walked into the rest area, and Professor Kane took Maureen and Webbery to the competition stage. The 4 competition stages have been merged into one competition stage. The competition of the last 4 contestants is no longer carried out at the same time, but one competition is completed before the next one. On the competition stage, O'Neill, the president of the Ministry of Magic Academic Research Society, was already standing there, pointing his wand at his throat, with a face full of high spirits. I believe everyone already knows the names of the top 4 in this year's Dumbledore Cup Transfiguration competition, O'Neill said to everyone. His voice was like rolling thunder, rumbling, making the entire stadium quiet. They are the best among the 30 contestants. Their transfiguration skills are obvious to all. Regardless of winning or losing, the 4 of them are the future stars. O'Neill gave an impassioned speech. Then please invite the 4 contestants to the stage now. The whole audience applauded enthusiastically, and the applause lasted for a long time. Many audience members used magic to spray various ribbons into the air, and the whistles and screams lasted for a long time. Beverly Baptist from Boxburton School. Beverly is a sweet-looking girl and a rising star this year. She is a 5th-year student at Boxburton School. Last year, she did not perform well, but this year she successfully entered the semifinals, which is amazing. Such a beautiful girl's appearance naturally won a round of warm applause. Drumstrang, Zimmerman Gustry. When Zimmerman walked onto the stage, the audience burst into applause. He was the first-place winner of the Dumbledore Cup last year. His performance in the first few rounds this year was even more eye-catching. He was also the focus of attention among all the contestants. His transfiguration skills were obvious to all. Everyone felt that this year's Dumbledore Cup would probably belong to him. Hogwarts, Webbery Harris. That's my son. Webbery's father, Mr. Harris, shouted the loudest in the stands, shouting at the top of his lungs, excited, "My son washed his hair 3 times today. I have a feeling he will win." Mr. Harris wanted to stretch out his legs to applaud his son. Hogwarts, Maureen Walker. When Maureen, the youngest and shortest, walked onto the stage, the applause from the audience was scattered, forming a sharp contrast with the other contestants. Everyone looked at each other, and many people didn't even know how this person made it to the semifinals. Everyone was not very familiar with Maureen, because after a whole day of competition, Maureen was lucky enough to get a bye, and the focus of the first and third rounds was on Zimmerman, so when everyone learned that there was a 12-year-old student in Hogwarts this year, they were very surprised. Who is this person? How did a junior get in? Is this a bit lucky? Many people were whispering to each other, wanting to know more about Maureen. They knew very little about Maureen, a rising star. Although Maureen was in the newspaper once before he went to school, not many people remembered this incident. The 4 contestants undoubtedly became the focus of the field, and many wizard headhunters were ready to move. This year's competition was very interesting. Maureen's appearance was unexpected by everyone. He was a rising star, and everyone really focused on him this time. Even O'Neill, who is a member of the Ministry of Magic's Academic Research Association, couldn't help but look at Maureen a few more times. Ladies and gentlemen, the next step is the drawing ceremony. Let's see how 4 smart young men and girls choose their opponents. O'Neill waved his wand, and 4 parchments were rolled up and tied with red ribbons. Then they floated into the air and rotated and intertwined in the air. Number 1 against number 4, number 2 against number 3, come on. Ladies first. O'Neill nodded to Beverly of Box Buttons. Beverly walked forward with her head held high and picked a parchment from the floating parchments. Then next, in order of last name, Mr. Gustry. Zimmerman walked forward slowly and picked up the second parchment. Next was Webbery, and the last parchment was held in Maureen's hand. Now, throw out the parchments in your hands, let's see who your opponents are. O'Neill shouted loudly. The 4 people did not open the parchment, but threw it into the air according to O'Neill's request. The 4 rolls of parchment exploded into pieces with a bang. These pieces gradually gathered above the 4 contestants, forming 4 numbers. The number suspended above Maureen was number 1, the number suspended above Webbery was number 2, the number suspended above Beverly was number 3, and Zimmerman was number 4. Webbery versus Beverly. Maureen versus Zimmerman. The audience burst into warm applause again. Some people cheered, and some booed, because the opponent of the strongest Zimmerman turned out to be the youngest Maureen. In their opinion, the outcome of this contest was already determined. Professor Kane in the audience didn't know whether to be happy or sad. No matter what the result of the draw was, he was very worried. Zimmerman was a powerful opponent that Hogwarts had to face. Although Webbery did not meet Maureen, Maureen met Zimmerman. Professor Kane was worried that Maureen would be nervous. But Maureen on the stage did not look nervous at all. He looked very excited. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Very good, this is the result I want. Maureen clenched his wand. He needed to find out the answer to the matter. At the referee's signal, Webberly and Beverly had already walked off the stage, and their competition would be in the next round. Then the competition between Zimmerman Gustry and Maureen Walker will begin now. O'Neill shouted loudly. There were many boos from the audience. This first match was not as attractive as imagined. The first place in the Dumbledore Cup final last year was more than enough to beat students who looked only in the 2nd grade. On the stage, there were only Maureen and Zimmerman, a cornerstone and 4 transformation stones. When the referee shouted to start, neither Maureen nor Zimmerman took the initiative. Zimmerman looked at Maureen meaningfully and spoke first. I thought I might meet you in the final. Who are you? Maureen asked in a deep voice. What do you want to do with me? Many wizards in the audience were already shouting impatiently. What are you waiting for? Quickly end this competition. We want to see the real game. Many spectators were urging. The 7th grade Zimmerman had the strength to crush the 2nd grade Maureen, but he was reluctant to do so, which made the audience very dissatisfied. These poor people. Zimmerman glanced at the audience around him and suddenly sneered, "Do they really think they can see the next game? What do you mean? You will understand, Invisible Man." Zimmerman showed a weird smile. "This is the last game of the day." Maureen's pupils shrank slightly. Chapter 333 Weird Pattern. The setting sun had sunk into the horizon, and the crimson clouds in the sky were still burning, making a final attempt to retain the passing day. As night gradually fell, lights were lit around the stadium. The Muggle lighting facilities were extremely advanced, illuminating the entire stadium as bright as day. But Maureen suddenly felt uneasy, and this feeling came too suddenly. "Are you Lucas? Or that old witch? What do you want to do?" Maureen raised his wand and asked vigilantly. He felt that something was getting more and more wrong around him. The lights in the stadium were bright, and the wizards in the audience kept booing, but these sounds and lights made Maureen feel a little unreal, as if all the wizards in the stadium were suddenly getting farther and farther away from him. "You'll know soon." Zimmerman had raised his wand, and he casually pointed at one of the deformation stones. The deformation stone immediately shattered and formed a pool of broken sand. The sand flew in the air and soon gathered into the familiar smoke monster. Maureen stared at Zimmerman. The moment Zimmerman gathered the smoke monster, he had already made a move. A purple light shot out from the tip of the magic wand and swept towards the sand wizard figure. He didn't want to give Zimmerman a chance to make any moves. Bang! The sand figure was shattered by Maureen, but the sand quickly gathered again and then copied 12 figures, surrounding Maureen from different directions. The 12 sand figures revolved around Maureen, but did not attack Maureen. They stared at Maureen grimly, as if waiting for something. Maureen was surprised to find that there were different symbols or patterns on the foreheads of the 12 figures. One of the symbols was the one Maureen had seen in the Forbidden Forest, a triangle with small circles floating on the 3 sides, and another symbol was the symbol of the Deathly Hallows. Then he saw the symbol of Pyangad, a pen with a half-open and half-closed eye at the tip of the pen. He looked to the left. There was a circle on the forehead of the sand wizard on the left. In the middle of the circle, there was a wolf that seemed to be about to jump out. There was a scar on the wolf's left eye, which ran across the entire head of the wolf, making it look very ferocious. The mark of the Wolf King, Lackenwolf. Maureen looked around again, but strangely, he did not find the mark of Voldemort's Death Eaters. He only found a snake spitting out its tongue. Not only that, there was also a majestic lion, an eagle with wings spread out, and an honest badger. These were actually the patterns of the 4 colleges of Hogwarts. What on earth is this? Maureen was extremely surprised. What did these 12 patterns represent? "How dare you make a mark of a dark wizard in public?" Maureen shouted. The entire stadium was full of wizards. Although the skull mark of the Death Eaters did not appear on the foreheads of these 12 human figures, many people knew the symbol of Grindelwald. Grindelwald's reputation was no weaker than Voldemort's. Many people could still tell at a glance that he was a notorious dark wizard. Zimmerman actually dared to show these symbols at this time? "Make a mark? You can see it." Zimmerman suddenly said something very strange. Maureen was slightly stunned. He looked at the referee's seat. Even if the referee didn't recognize Pyang's symbol, he should have stopped it as soon as he saw Grindelwald's symbol. But the referee didn't see it. They even seemed to be a little confused. "Hurry up. What are you standing there for?" "That's right, you've been standing there for a long time without casting magic. How long are you going to drag it out?" Many spectators around began to curse. Although these voices sounded very far away, Maureen still heard them, as if everyone thought they hadn't started yet. But did Zimmerman turn the stone into a sand figure? What's going on? Why can't everyone seem to see the appearance of these sand figures? Maureen's uneasiness became stronger and stronger. Doi jumped on his shoulder again and made an uneasy cry. The last bit of sunset light finally dissipated, and the night enveloped the earth. This familiar feeling. Don't go out after dark. Maureen raised his head suddenly, and was surprised to see 2 moons in the night sky. Damn it! How come we are here again? Maureen was shocked. Every time he came to this place, nothing good happened. He would see all kinds of strange and dangerous things, and would be hunted from time to time. The last time he was in the school's Forbidden Forest, if Doi hadn't suddenly jumped out, he would have been in great danger. Sure enough, he soon found that many small shadows had appeared in the distant sky. Those shadows seemed to be coming towards this side quickly. The shadows gradually changed from the size of rice grains to the size of soybeans, and were getting closer and closer. Maureen already knew what these shadows were, the damn monster that always liked to go out at night. It's amazing. Someone told me that you can see things that we can't see. Yes, your unique pair of heterochromatic pupils are unique, but why do you close them? Why don't you cherish this ability? Zimmerman said slowly. The latest novel is published on 69 Shuba. But this time, Maureen didn't even want to look at anything. He held Doi tightly and closed his eyes. As long as he closed his eyes, he could escape from this hellhole. Do you think you can avoid everything by closing your eyes? Zimmerman continued, why do you have to make such a meaningless struggle? Invisible Man, Maureen Walker. Why don't you open your eyes and take a look? Maureen calmed down. He didn't understand what Zimmerman was going to do, but he had to leave this hellhole and return to the stadium. When Zimmerman's voice came over, he felt something was wrong, because if he came to this place directly, Maureen would not be able to hear other people's voices. The last time he came to this place in front of Grandpa Alton and Hugo, he didn't hear Alton and Hugo's voices. But why could he still hear Zimmerman talking? Maureen felt that it was about time. He opened his eyes carefully and looked up at the sky again. Then his heart sank. There were still 2 moons in the sky. The black monsters on the horizon were still approaching. The shadows were already the size of thumbs. How could it be? Why didn't it work this time? Maureen withdrew his gaze in doubt. He looked around again and was even more surprised. He was still in the stadium. The audience was still booing and cursing, urging the 2 of them to act quickly. He didn't seem to go to that place. When he set his eyes on Zimmerman, his expression was slightly startled. Zimmerman pointed his wand at a piece of transfiguration stone. The transfiguration stone was transformed into a black box the size of a brick at some point. Maureen had seen this black box before. The last time Lucas was in the Muggle office building, he created so much chaos just to get it. What surprised Maureen the most was not the black box, but Zimmerman himself. When Zimmerman was holding the box, it seemed as if a black curtain was wrapping around his body, and the 2 moons in the sky that Maureen saw were in this black curtain. Chapter 334 Black Box. You saw it, didn't you? You can see the wonderful magic contained in this box, right? Tell me, what did you see? Zimmerman's eyes suddenly became extremely fanatical. What on earth is this box? Maureen looked at the black box in Zimmerman's hand in surprise. The lid of the box was opened a crack, and the black curtain beside Zimmerman seemed to have drilled out from the crack of the box. The world of 2 moons that Maureen saw was all in this curtain. This curtain was like a background on the stage, and it was also like an irregular bubble, shaking slightly beside Zimmerman, making him look a little erratic. What was even more strange was that all the wizards present did not see the 2 moons in this curtain. Even Zimmerman, who was holding the black box, seemed to be unable to see the scene in the curtain. It seemed that only Maureen could see the scene wrapped in this curtain. What on earth are you doing? Maureen shouted. He watched the monster in the sky in the curtain getting closer and closer, and he became anxious. He had a strong sense of uneasiness. Those monsters in the sky seemed to be coming for him, and to Maureen, the scene contained in the curtain seemed very real. You realize it? Yes, I can see the fear in your eyes. Dusk takes away the last ray of light, and darkness will descend on the world. The invisible man shuttles between light and darkness and becomes the guide of the messenger of God. Zimmerman let out a shrill laugh. This sound seemed completely unhuman. It echoed in Maureen's ears, making Maureen's eardrums ache. No matter what nonsense you are talking about, I will stop you. Maureen no longer hesitated, drew out his wand, and cast attraction spell, trying to snatch the black box from Zimmerman's hand. But Zimmerman's reaction was no slower than his. With a wave of his wand, 3 pieces of deformed stones whizzed towards him in the air. Easy to control. Maureen wanted to take away the control of the 3 transfiguration stones, but Zimmerman's control over the transfiguration stones was very strong. Maureen tried twice, but he couldn't take away the control of the transfiguration stones. He immediately waved his wand to the ground, and the bricks and stones on the ground were cut out and turned into 3 vines. The vines twisted and met the 3 transfiguration stones. However, the 3 transfiguration stones all scattered into a ball of yellow sand, avoiding Maureen's bricks and stones. A giant hand emerged from the sand, swaying in the air, grabbing Maureen. When Maureen was about to trap her, he didn't know when his feet sank down and turned into a swamp. The mud of the swamp tightly bound his feet, making it impossible for him to operate. At this time, the giant hand condensed from the sand had already reached Maureen's head. Maureen's magic wand quickly waved out a white light. This light gathered in the air, as if a whirlwind blew up, cutting the giant hand in the middle, and an invisible wind trapped the giant hand. This is the Wind Prison Dragon spell. Maureen rarely uses this spell on others because it is very dangerous. If you are not careful, it will crush people. However, he has not mastered the Wind Prison Dragon spell to that extent. At this time, he can only use this spell to deal with the giant hand. Maureen waved his magic wand, and the magic wand shook quickly. The invisible wind quickly contracted and pressed the giant hand down. The giant hand still wanted to struggle, but it couldn't break free from the restraints of the Wind Prison Dragon. The range of the Wind Prison Dragon shrank rapidly, and soon the giant hand was crushed into pieces. The giant hand condensed from the sand was once again pressed into a pile of loose sand. Maureen spun his wand again, and the loose sand was compacted and turned into hard stone. He forcibly changed the appearance of the sand, breaking Zimmerman's spell in one go, and taking control of the deformed stones from Zimmerman. Change in an instant. Maureen waved his wand, and the deformed stones turned into pieces of tides, sweeping violently, turning into a water curtain and rushing towards Zimmerman. Zimmerman couldn't dodge and was wrapped by the water curtain, as if he was trapped in a water ball. Maureen shouted again, "Freeze 3 feet." The water ball began to freeze with a crackling and crackling sound, trapping Zimmerman in the ice ball. He then focused on his feet, preparing to lift the swamp spell under his feet, but before he could wave his wand, the ice ball that trapped Zimmerman had exploded with a bang, and ice chips flew everywhere, and Zimmerman had already broken free. All the ice fragments were scattered in the air, and then gathered together again to form a huge ice snake. The snake rushed towards Maureen fiercely. Before the huge body of the ice snake hit him, Maureen had already lifted the swamp spell under his feet. He jumped up from the swamp and disappeared from the spot. When he reappeared, he was already next to Zimmerman. Maureen's wand had thrown out a rope, which was flexibly wandering in the air. Zimmerman had already cast a cutting spell, but Maureen controlled the rope to avoid Zimmerman's cutting spell and quickly entangled a box in Zimmerman's hand and snatched the box away. At this time, Zimmerman raised his hand and cast a petrification spell on him. Maureen quickly jumped to the side and avoided the petrification spell, then took the black box and apparated to the other side of the stage. At this time, the referee had already warned him because Zimmerman had used the petrification spell on Maureen, which was not allowed in the transfiguration competition. Some spells such as the petrification spell were only allowed to be used on the transformed object. For example, when the opponent's transfiguration stone turned into a bear, the contestant could use the petrification spell to petrify the bear, but the petrification spell could not be used against the contestant. The transfiguration competition had a very strict system, and the contestant who committed a serious foul would be directly disqualified from the competition. However, Zimmerman ignored the referee's warning. He just sneered at Maureen. By now, he didn't care about the outcome of the competition. He used illegal magic items. Maureen raised the black box in his hand and shouted to the referee. The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. However, the referee did not seem to think that the box was an illegal item, because Zimmerman had just turned the transfiguration stone into a black box in front of them. In their opinion, it was just Zimmerman's transfiguration. It's useless. No one knows this thing. They can't see anything you see, not even me. In everyone's eyes, it's just an ordinary black box. Zimmerman seemed to have expected this. His tone even sounded like he was mocking those people. But now the box is in my hand, and your conspiracy can continue. Maureen tried hard to close the box, but unfortunately the gap in the box seemed to be stuck by a huge resistance, so he couldn't close it. Zimmerman had a strange smile on his face. Yes, you are right. The box is in your hand. It must be in your hand. Maureen was stunned. What do you mean? Don't you understand? The box is useless in my hand. It is only useful in your hand. Zimmerman said slowly. Maureen was slightly stunned, and he suddenly felt something was wrong. Chapter 335 The Player Who Lost His Mind. Maureen immediately looked up above his head. The curtain that came out of the crack in the box was spinning around him. The 2 moons in the sky were right above his head. What surprised him even more was that the monster in the distance had already swooped down from the sky. He only wanted to take the black box from Zimmerman and prevent Zimmerman's plot from succeeding, but he didn't expect that Zimmerman actually gave the black box to him on purpose. Damn it! He wanted to throw the black box away without hesitation, But there seemed to be an inexplicable attraction on the black box, which firmly stuck to his hand, and he couldn't get rid of it for a while. This annoying sticking curse. It's useless. How could I let you get rid of it so easily? Zimmerman laughed triumphantly. His expression was extremely crazy. The veins on his eyebrows twisted with excitement, like chaotic tree roots. Just hold this box honestly, and petrify it. Zimmerman did not give Maureen a chance to break the sticking spell. He wanted to petrify Maureen. Only in this way could Maureen not throw away the box. Maureen had no choice but to dodge to the side and avoid the petrification spell. At this time, the referee in the audience also saw something wrong. One of the referees warned Zimmerman again, Mr. Gustry, second warning, the petrification spell is only allowed to act on the transformation stone, and it is forbidden to use it on the players. If you violate it again, you will be directly disqualified from the competition. But Zimmerman didn't care about the outcome of the game at all. He treated the referee as air. He waved his wand at the stage, and a black mist spread over the entire stage, blocking everyone's sight. Foul. The Durmstrang people fouled. Professor Kane shouted in protest to the referee in the audience. The three referees exchanged ideas. O'Neill, the president of the Ministry of Magic Research Association, raised his wand and pointed at his throat. His voice became extremely loud. Durmstrang School, 3 violations of the rules, disqualified. Hogwarts wins. One of the referees had already raised his wand and removed the blinding spell cast by Zimmerman. All the smoke dissipated. However, Zimmerman was like a madman on the stage at this time. Various stun spells and petrification spells kept shooting at Maureen. Maureen was entangled by the black box and could only keep dodging. The audience was in an uproar, not understanding why Zimmerman suddenly seemed to lose his mind and used various illegal spells on Maureen. Stop. Despicable. Shameless. Dirty villain. Professor Kane was about to rush to the stage anxiously. He couldn't approach to the stage. Except for the contestants, no one could approach directly to the stage because the stage was set with protective magic to prevent emotional wizard audiences from approach and interfere with the game. But suddenly a row of black fences more than 1 meter high appeared around the stage, enclosing the entire stage. Professor Kane gasped and stopped in front of the black fence. He used black magic. Professor Kane looked at the fence in surprise. This is a blackthorn fence. How dare he? Bastard. O'Neill and others also reacted, and they all had solemn expressions on their faces. The blackthorn fence is a very powerful black magic. Although it is just a row of short fences, anyone trapped inside cannot use the apparition to get out. Apart from anything else, the magic power of the people trapped inside will be sucked away by the fence, and they will not be able to cast magic. After the magic is drained, it will begin to devour life, which is extremely dangerous. 5 minutes. O'Neill said in a deep voice. Although the blackthorn fence is powerful, as the president of the Magic Academic Research Society, he naturally knows how to get rid of it, but this process takes time. Everyone was nervously looking at Maureen on the stage. The Durmstrang students used dark magic on the Hogwarts students, as if they had some deep hatred with the Hogwarts students. No one knew why Zimmerman would make such an unwise move in front of so many people. Maureen not only had to avoid Zimmerman's attack on the stage, but he also had to think about how to throw away the box. Zimmerman said that the black box was only useful in his hands, so the most urgent thing was to throw away the box. It was just that the sticking spell Zimmerman cast was too annoying. He now cast various petrification spells and coma spells on Maureen, trying to control Maureen and not give Maureen the opportunity to throw away the black box. It was obviously a delay. No one could see the curtain-like world coming out of the black box. Only Maureen could see it clearly. Those monsters were coming towards him, and he had to leave quickly. Die? Zimmerman shouted. There are so many obstacles. Maureen simply stopped trying to find a chance to remove the sticking spell. He had to knock Zimmerman down first, otherwise everything would be in vain. When Zimmerman shot a petrifying spell at him, Maureen's wand also sprayed a petrifying spell. The two petrifying spells collided in the air, creating hot sparks and suddenly exploded. Zimmerman shook his wand quickly, and the gravel on the ground was rolled up by him, turning into a whirlwind, sweeping towards Maureen. The power of the whirlwind was very strong, mixed with broken sand, and when it flew at high speed, it was like a sharp knife, extremely sharp. Maureen didn't care about the rules of the game. A flame came out from the tip of his wand. The flame roared in the air and turned into the shape of a fire dragon, colliding with the whirlwind. The whirlwind was suddenly ignited by the flame, and the two violent spells collided and tore each other, and finally exploded with a bang. The latest novel is released on the 69th Book Forum. All the audience cheered. Although Zimmerman had been disqualified, this level of competition was surprisingly exciting. For them, this was a real competition. Zimmerman was indeed a very talented person. Maureen knew that it made sense for this person to get the first place last year. His magic level was probably catching up with the experienced Aurors. Constance, who had the highest magic level in Hogwarts, was not Zimmerman's opponent. Maureen could easily defeat Constance, but he couldn't defeat Zimmerman in a short time. The reason why Zimmerman was taken away by Maureen just now was that he deliberately exposed his flaws, but he was not injured by Maureen. Now in order to capture Maureen, he has no scruples. This kind of person is meticulous and extremely scary. Hookah cage. Zimmerman's once sprayed out a stream of clear water, which spread out and became water drops all over the sky. These water drops wrapped around Maureen in the air, and each drop of water vibrated with each other. There was a strange force pulling each other, forming a square cage, trapping Maureen firmly in the cage. Maureen sent a cutting spell towards the cage, but the cutting spell drilled out from between the water drops and could not be placed on the water drops. The spell of this water cage was quite powerful, and Maureen could not hit it even if he cast a freezing spell. At this time, Zimmerman took advantage of Maureen's inattention and had already apparated behind Maureen, and raised his wand towards Maureen's back, petrification. The angle of this spell was very tricky, and Maureen had no time to dodge. Chapter 336 The Monster Following. When Maureen turned around, Zimmerman's petrification spell was only 2 feet away from him. Everyone exclaimed. Zimmerman's attack speed was too fast. Maureen would be petrified. You are not my opponent at all. Just surrender. Zimmerman sneered. He was very confident in his spell. At such a close distance, even if Maureen wanted to use other spells in a hurry, it would be impossible to offset the petrification spell. He would definitely be hit by his spell. As long as Maureen told the truth, then Maureen would have no way to get rid of the black box and could only hold the black box in his hand. Many viewers were admiring Zimmerman's superb magic level. Although Zimmerman was only a 7th grade student, his magic level was higher than most of the people present. If nothing unexpected happened, this kind of person would definitely have a bright future. At the same time, the audience also felt sorry for Maureen. Maureen was only in the 2nd grade, and it was quite unexpected for him to get to this point, not to mention that he could fight with Zimmerman with spells for so long. Everyone thought that Maureen lost because of his age. But Maureen was not hit by Zimmerman's petrification spell as everyone expected. He raised his wand and shouted in a low voice, "Spell jump!" This was the first time and space magic he learned from Walker. He couldn't counteract Zimmerman's petrification spell, so he had to fight hard and transfer Zimmerman's spell away. A golden light lit up at the tip of Maureen's wand, and Maureen quickly gathered it into a vortex-shaped cloud. The petrification spell hit the vortex and disappeared in an instant. Then Maureen turned his wand again and waved it twice in the air. Zimmerman frowned slightly. He felt something was wrong. He was wondering why the petrification spell didn't hit Maureen. At this time, a golden light appeared on his left. A vortex appeared from the left, and then the petrification spell rushed out and hit Zimmerman's neck hard. How is it possible? The smug look on Zimmerman's face suddenly stagnated. His whole body became extremely stiff and he stood there unable to move. All the audience watched all this in surprise. None of them knew what spell Maureen had used. It was obvious that Maureen was at an absolute disadvantage at the beginning. Why was Zimmerman suddenly petrified? You're too much? Maureen waved his wand again in anger, rolled up the petrified Zimmerman and threw him out, smashing him on the blackthorn fence at the edge of the stage. The audience cheered. This was really incredible. Maureen actually defeated the powerful Zimmerman. Everyone thought this contest was very exciting, and even ignored the fact that Zimmerman used black magic. But only Maureen was not happy after defeating Zimmerman. None of these people could see what was inside the black box. Only Maureen knew best what he had to do now. Maureen raised his wand and cast a clearing spell at the black box, trying to remove the sticking spell on it, but Zimmerman was prepared. The sticking spell was very powerful and the removal process was extremely slow. He raised his head again, only to find that the monster in the sky was less than 50 meters away from him. If he waited until the sticking spell was completely removed, it would probably be too late. Those monsters would definitely pounce on him. He didn't know what these monsters would do to him, but his intuition told him that it was definitely not a good thing. All he could do now was to close the box. At the critical moment, a spell suddenly flashed through Maureen's mind, and he immediately waved his wand. Wind and thunder sound. Maureen's wand emitted a blue arc of electricity. He didn't even know if this spell would work, but he remembered that it was with a spell that he broke Lucas's lock magnet, and he had the idea when he saw the box. The blue electric arc crashed and fell on the black box. In a very strange way, it wrapped the black box. The arc flashed, and the black box trembled slightly, as if it was very afraid of lightning. Then the box began to slowly close, and the black curtain around Maureen began to gradually dissipate. The world of the two moons was getting farther and farther away from him. On the contrary, the shouts of the audience in the stadium became more and more real to him. It worked. He knew that he was breaking free from the black curtain, and the black curtain gradually dissipated. But just when the world in the curtain completely disappeared, a long-armed bat-like monster rushed to the front, stretched out its sharp claws to grab Maureen's robe, and broke free from the black curtain in an instant. Damn it! Maureen was shocked. The black curtain had completely disappeared, but this monster actually followed him to the stage. Ah! What is this? Where did it come from? All the wizards in the audience suddenly shouted, looking at the monster that took Maureen's robe in doubt. The monster was as tall as an adult, and its wings were nearly 5 meters long when fully spread. It looked ferocious, and it was definitely not something to be trifled with. They didn't know how this monster appeared. Maureen secretly cried out that it was not good. When his robe was hooked, he immediately apparated to the other side of the stage. The claws of the long-armed bat monster tore his wizard robe apart with a crash. At this time, O'Neill finally eliminated the blackthorn fence used by Zimmerman, and also lifted the ban on the stage, but when he saw the monster suddenly appear on the stage, he was also shocked. My God, where did this thing come from? O'Neill looked at this fierce long-armed bat in disbelief. In his impression, there was no such bat in the wizard world. The latest novel is first published on 69shushu.com. Maureen, are you okay? Professor Kane ran the fastest. He jumped in front of Maureen and pulled her behind him. At the same time, he shot a stun spell at the monster. But the monster flapped its thin wings lightly, made a sharp cry, dodged the stun spell, and rushed towards Zimmerman, who was closest to it. Zimmerman had just gotten rid of his petrification spell and got up from the ground. He looked at the monster and screamed angrily, "What's going on? Why is there only one? It shouldn't be, there shouldn't be only one. There should be a whole group. There should be tens of thousands." The long-armed bat blew up a gust of wind in the air and knocked Zimmerman down. Zimmerman screamed, but he didn't have time to dodge. The long-armed bat's claws grabbed him from his chest to his shoulders. A bloody mark deep enough to see the bone appeared on his body. He was immediately covered in blood and fell off the stage. Everyone screamed. Chapter 337 Powerful Monster. What on earth is this? O'Neill looked at the monster that suddenly appeared in shock and anger. They had never seen where this monster came from. But all the wizards present were people with extremely high magic skills. They immediately fired powerful stun spells and whipping spells at the long-handed bat. These spells all hit the long-handed bat like fireworks. Bang! The long-handed bat only had time to dodge a few spells before it was immediately knocked away by the spells, creating a huge pit on the stage. But even these powerful spells did not subdue the long-handed bat. The long-handed bat roared, climbed up from the deep pit, and flapped its wings again to rush into the sky, rushing towards the nearest wizard. The wizard cast a purple spell, but this time the spell did not hit the long-handed bat, but passed through the body of the long-handed bat. What? The wizard was shocked. The long-armed bat monster seemed to have turned into a transparent shadow. The spell had no effect on it. A strong fishy wind blew in his nose. The wizard had no time to think about it. He had already disappeared into the air and avoided the attack of the long-armed bat. The long-armed bat flapped its huge wings and turned a corner. Its gray eyes as big as ping-pong balls flashed and rushed towards Maureen. Professor Kane immediately waved his wand. He just blinked and cast 7 or 8 very terrible spells. These spells almost ignited the air. Maureen had no doubt that if this spell was hid on a house, it would be enough to blow the house to pieces. But the long-armed bat had become extremely illusory. Professor Kane's spells all passed through its body and flew into the sky, unable to hurt it at all. Professor Kane quickly grabbed Maureen and apparated out, but the long-armed monster seemed to have been staring at Maureen. It turned a corner and passed through a row of chairs. Its speed was so fast that when Professor Kane just appeared with Maureen, the long-armed bat had already pounced on him. Damn it! What the hell is this? Professor Kane shouted angrily, and quickly pulled Maureen to the side. When the long-armed bat monster grabbed him, its illusory body became solid again, and it tore the referee's table next to it to pieces. At this time, Professor Kane swung a fire spell, which hit the long-armed bat monster and set it on fire. The long-armed monster let out a painful cry, and its body immediately became illusory again, and the flames disappeared instantly. When it attacks, it will be hit by the spell. Maureen shouted. Everyone immediately reacted. When the long-armed bat wanted to avoid the spell, it would become illusory. When it rushed through a row of chairs just now, the chairs were all safe. Only when it attacked would it cause damage. But this means that it is almost impossible to subdue this long-armed bat. As long as it becomes illusory, the wizard's spell will have no effect on it. At this time, the long-armed bat has become illusory again, hovering in the air, and it rushed over to grab Maureen again. It wants to catch me. I will lure it. Maureen shouted, once it attacks me, you can subdue it with a spell. Don't be impulsive. Maureen, no. Professor Kane held Maureen tightly, not letting Maureen put himself in danger. Maureen said anxiously, Professor, if we don't do this, none of us can catch it. And I have a hunch that it won't do anything to me. He vaguely understood in his heart that this long-armed bat just wanted to catch him, so that he could open the black box and take over the other monsters. When the monster caught him, it was the best opportunity for other wizards. As long as the monster showed its entity, the wizards present would have a chance to subdue it. But Professor Kane said in an unquestionable tone, I said no. I can't let anything happen to you. With so many wizards present, this monster must be subdued. The long-armed bat rushed over again, and Professor Kane grabbed Maureen and threw him to the side again. The long-armed bat grabbed a large piece of soil from the ground, and the soil splashed everywhere. Quickly notify the people in the Department of Magical Creatures of the Ministry of Magic and let them deal with this beast. All wizards seemed helpless against this monster. O'Neill shouted and sent a binding spell to the long-armed bat, but the monster passed through his binding spell and was not hurt at all. Maureen got up from the ground. The black box was originally stuck to his hand by the sticking spell. He had been trying to eliminate the sticking spell just now. At this time, the sticking spell had completely disappeared. In order to protect him, Professor Kane threw him down. With his fall, the black box was thrown out in the chaos. No one knew where it was thrown. That box. Maureen looked around anxiously. Although this mysterious box was very dangerous in his hands, he had to figure out what this black box meant. He was sure that the black box was Lucas's conspiracy, because Lucas created chaos in the Muggle office building last time just to find the box. But the long-clawed bat circled in the air and swooped down from the hail of bullets again, and the target was still Maureen. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. Professor Kane has been protecting Maureen. When Maureen was looking for the black box, he grabbed Maureen and left here with a disapparition, appearing on the other side of the stadium. No, Professor, we must get the box. Maureen shouted. No matter what box it is, I must ensure your safety. Professor Kane said seriously. But Maureen knew that this was not a solution. If other wizards couldn't deal with the long-handed bat, he had to rely on him to open the box again to see if he could lure the long-handed bat back to the place with 2 moons, and then close the box. This was the best way. The long-armed bat rushed towards Maureen again, and it seemed to have locked Maureen's position. No matter where Professor Kane took him to the stadium, the monster would rush over in time. But at this moment, Dewey let out a low roar from Maureen's shoulder, and it had already jumped out. Its body became extremely huge, and its 2 long teeth like blades flashed cold light, 1 blue and 1 green eyes glowed fiercely, and there was a pair of very strange small wings made of flames behind it. Dewey's fierce and ferocious appearance appeared again, and it became another monster. The only difference was that no one except Maureen could see Dewey's monster. When the long-armed bat pounced on it, Dewey swept out with its sharp claws, grabbed the wings of the long-armed bat, and threw it over his shoulder, throwing it out. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 338. Dewey is awesome. What happened? All the wizards were stunned. They didn't see Dewey's appearance. They only saw that when the long-armed bat was about to catch Maureen, it was suddenly caught by an invisible big hand and thrown away. They didn't understand what happened to the long-armed bat. However, an even more shocking scene appeared next. The ferocious Dewey roared, and it slapped the long-armed bat's forehead with one claw, leaving 5 bloody scars on the long-armed bat's face. The long-armed bat screamed miserably, staring at Dewey angrily, flapping its wings and flying high into the sky, but Dewey also had a pair of small wings made of flames. Its small wings flapped and rushed out like a cannonball, grabbing the long-armed bat, swinging it twice in the air, and directly smashing the long-armed bat out like a sandbag. Boom! The long-armed bat was smashed into the ground, shattering the stadium. Although it stood up immediately, it looked very decadent this time. It could make its body illusory to deal with the wizard's spell, but it couldn't use this method to avoid Dewey's attack, which made it very angry. But the manic Dewey didn't give the long-armed bat any chance to struggle and rest. It swooped down again, its hard-pointed hair whistling through the night sky, and its sharp claws grabbed the long-armed bat's wings at once. Bang! 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 The long-armed bat was like a broken doll, being violently smashed from left to right and from right to left by the ferocious Dewey, making all kinds of soul-stirring collision sounds, and the whole stadium seemed to be trembling faintly. All the spectators opened their mouths involuntarily. Who is dealing with this monster? O'Neill couldn't help swallowing his saliva and asked everyone's doubts. This monster had just left these experienced wizards helpless, but they didn't expect to be caught by something and swung around in the air. To them, it seemed like the long-armed bat was hurting itself. But this was impossible. There was no reason for the long-armed bat to suddenly smash itself around like a madman. Dewey! Roar! 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 The ferocious Dewey grabbed the wings of the long-armed bat, swung it in the air for several circles, and then smashed it hard. The long-armed bat was smashed into the audience. Many wizards screamed and quickly paraded to the side. No! Help! O'Neill realized that there were still some wizards in the audience who couldn't apparate. They quickly waved their wands and cast a series of protective spells to block the body of the long-armed bat to avoid causing more casualties. The long-armed bat fell in front of the audience with a bang. Just when people were in doubt, Dewey had rushed over again and grabbed the wings of the long-armed bat again. The originally ferocious long-armed bat was hit several times by Dewey, and it seemed to be deflated, without any resistance. Dewey's 2 sharp claws grabbed the wings of the long-armed bat. Wow! The wings of the long-armed bat were immediately torn apart. Then came the 2 ridiculously long hands of the long-armed bat, as well as the hairy body and head. Various wow sounds rang out one after another, and in a blink of an eye, the long-armed bat's body was torn into several halves, and blood and flesh flew all over the sky. All the wizards took a breath of cold air. This was too weird. They couldn't see Dewey, so they only saw an invisible big hand madly ravaging this long-armed bat. In the end, everyone even began to sympathize with this long-armed bat. This death was too miserable. Even Maureen was stunned, because he was the only one who saw how the ferocious Dewey dismembered the long-armed bat with his claws. Dewey was fierce and could not be stopped at all. The whole place fell silent. The monster that suddenly appeared wreaked havoc for 10 minutes. All the wizards were helpless against it. They thought that the monster was going to cause a great riot, but then it was inexplicably torn apart, and its limbs and broken bodies fell all over the ground. It was as if it had suddenly died. This was something that no one had expected. This monster just died like that, O'Neill said in doubt. Everyone looked at each other, not understanding why the monster that was just wreaking havoc was suddenly torn into pieces by something. Many wizards approached the limbs and broken bodies of the long-armed bat carefully, with their wands in their hands ready to deal with emergencies at any time. But at this time, a black flame suddenly ignited from the broken body of the long-armed bat. The flame burned rapidly, and then turned into a puff of smoke and disappeared, leaving no trace. What happened? Did the monster burn itself to death? A wizard said in surprise. It seemed to be true. No long-armed bat corpse could be found at the scene. Is this monster summoned by some kind of dark magic? Where is Raffle? His students used dark magic in front of so many people, he should give an explanation. As the president of the Academic Research Association of the Ministry of Magic, O'Neill looked around the stadium, looking for the figure of Raffle from Durmstrang. But no one saw Raffle, and the students of Durmstrang looked at each other. They didn't seem to understand what happened, and they didn't understand why Zimmerman, who had always been excellent in the past, suddenly lost his mind. Zimmerman was lying on the ground with blood dripping. He was so badly injured that he fainted. A wizard was helping to stop the bleeding and check his injuries. O'Neill and several other wizards were looking for Raffle everywhere. After this happened, they had to find Raffle and ask for an explanation. After Doi tore the long-armed bat apart in the air, she flew towards Maureen. Her body became petite again, and she returned to her former cute appearance. Doi, you are great. Maureen stretched out his palm and quickly caught Doi. Last time in the school's Forbidden Forest, Doi fought many monsters, but because there were too many opponents, it couldn't defeat them all. But this time there was only a long-armed bat, and the ferocious Doi tore the long-armed bat to pieces in one go. It was simple and rough, and the whole process didn't take much effort. Maureen felt incredible. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Doi, great. Doi stood on Maureen's palm, suddenly posed in a proud posture, and raised her little head proudly. Maureen opened his mouth and was surprised. Doi, you can talk. Doi, great. Doi repeated again. Oh my god. I didn't know you could talk, what else can you say? Maureen felt very novel. Usually Doi could only make the sound Doi, but today she could say other words. Doi, great. Doi put her little paws on her waist and said again. Doi, I know you are great, try calling my name, Molin. Momo. Not Momo, it's Molin Lin Lin. Not Lin Lin either, repeat after me, Molin. Doi, great. Molin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Doi still didn't seem to be able to speak well, and refused to say his name no matter what. But no matter what, Doi could at least say a few other words, which was a good start. Maybe he could teach Doi to speak in the future, so that he could know where this cruel little guy came from. Chapter 339 The Ignored Painting. Maureen put Doi in his pocket, and then he suddenly remembered the black box, and hurried to the place where he fell just now, ready to find the lost black box. There were many wizards holding wands to restore order at the scene, and restore the stadiums that were messed up by long-armed bats to normal. Maureen shuttled through the crowd, looking down for the black box. But after searching for a long time, he couldn't find where the black box went. He used the flying spell but it didn't work, as if the black box suddenly disappeared. Maureen, why are you running around again? Professor Kane came over in a hurry. He just turned around and Maureen disappeared. He was already worried enough about what happened suddenly at night, and didn't want to make it more complicated. Are you injured just now? That Zimmerman really used black magic, and he didn't have any competitive spirit at all. How dare he use black magic so blatantly? Professor Kane pulled Maureen over and checked his injuries. Seeing some scratches on Maureen's arms, he waved his wand to eliminate those scars. Professor, the black box is gone. Maureen said seriously. What black box? It's the black box I snatched from Zimmerman just now. Maureen didn't know how to explain, so he simply said, maybe it was some black magic, and the monster just came out of that box. Come out of that box? Is that so? I didn't see it clearly just now, I just saw him turn the stone into that black box. Professor Kane frowned, and then said angrily, so that guy raised a monster in the box to win you. I don't know, Professor, but I think it's important to find this box. Maureen continued to search in the chaotic crowd. After a moment, he raised his head and asked, Professor, is Zimmerman in disguise? When Zimmerman saw the long-armed bat coming out just now, he didn't even dodge, and was directly swept to the ground by the long-armed bat. If it was the old witch or Lucas who was in disguise, it would be too unreasonable. No, O'Neill tried the recovery potion. Zimmerman didn't drink the Polyjuice potion. He was just a bastard who used black magic to win the game. When he wakes up, he must pay the price. Professor Kane waved his wand, annoyed. Professor Kane also helped to find the black box that Maureen mentioned, because it was evidence to accuse Durmstrang students of using black magic. It is not uncommon to keep a big pet in a small box. Many magic items that have been cast with a traceless extension spell can do it, but the timing of this monster's appearance is a bit strange. It looks too much like it came out of the box, more like it appeared out of thin air. Except for Maureen, no one cared about this box. They couldn't see the curtain that Maureen saw, and didn't know where the long-armed bat came from. It's a pity that it was not found. Professor Kane also asked the staff of the Ministry of Magic and explained the situation to them. The staff of the Ministry of Magic were waving their wands to restore the damaged scene. There were various chair fragments, but no one saw that the black box had lost its trace in the chaotic crowd. Professor Kane walked back from the chaotic scene, and waved his wand to pick up a torn Greedy Witch billboard. He stepped over a chair that was smashed and twisted, and said as he walked, "It's crazy that it would be such a mess." Maureen looked at a firebolt flying broom flyer under his feet. There was an illustration on it. A Quidditch star was diving on the court, but because the picture on the flyer was torn in half, the little man in the picture could only straighten the flying broom, looking a little sad, not knowing where to fly. When Maureen saw this illustration, he suddenly remembered something. Oh, the painting of Pangard. Maureen ran quickly towards the distribution room of the stadium. "Maureen, where are you going? I told you not to run around." Professor Kane shouted from behind. "Professor, come on." Maureen shouted as he ran. In the dark corner of the stadium's auditorium, two figures were sitting there. The bright lights of the stadium could not shine here. All the light projected here would automatically disappear, as if they were avoiding this corner. The two people seemed to merge into the darkness, and no one saw them. "It seems that the guy you controlled with the Imperious curse is useless." The old witch's dry and unbearable voice slowly sounded. Her voice seemed gloomy in the darkness, and it was transmitted to people's eardrums, like dry nails scratching, making people feel creepy. Lucas sneered, "I have already said that I was just here to confirm one thing at night." "What is it? Can't you see it?" The old witch frowned, thought of something, and then nodded thoughtfully. After a moment, the old witch asked again, "So have you confirmed it?" Lucas turned a box in his hand. The black box seemed invisible in the dark. If you don't look carefully, you won't even notice that he is holding a box in his hand. Just now, he took advantage of the chaos among all the wizards and mixed in the crowd to get the black box back. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. "Yes, it's confirmed." Lucas sneered strangely, and looked at the chaotic stadium again, saying as if talking to himself, "I also got an unexpected surprise." The old witch raised her head, looked at the street lamp above her head, and said slowly, "You'd better not let me down." The street lamp flickered, and the light suddenly began to brighten, slowly shining into the dark corner, but the figures of two people had disappeared in the corner. Maureen was a step late. There were 3 Muggle electricity safety posters in the power distribution room, all drawn in the unique Muggle cartoon form, but one of them had become a blank drawing paper, and all traces disappeared. "Damn it!" Maureen angrily said, "I should have thought of it at that time." He was too careless. Magatha calculated that Raffle went to this distribution room and disappeared. He specially checked this distribution room, but he ignored the Muggle electricity safety poster on the wall, because the paintings he had seen before were moving, and he forgot that Ping's paintings could draw paintings that could not move. This stadium cannot be apparated away, so Lucas and Raffle must have left through this illustration. At that time, he was not sure whether Magatha saw Lucas, and he did not think of Ping for a while. "Are you sure this is Ping's painting?" Professor Kane looked at the Muggle poster carefully. The illustration on it was the size of a palm. He knew that Maureen had fought with Ping in the painting at school last semester. It must be. Maureen nodded, but then shook her head. "It shouldn't be now." Professor Kane tapped the poster with his wand and whispered some spells. No trace of magic was detected. Ping did it very cleanly. His methods were so advanced that he would not leave any handles. This is why he was able to live quietly in the painting for so many years. Professor Kane shook his head and said, "I can't prove that this is Ping's painting. I don't know much about the magic in the painting. To be honest, I don't know much about Ping." Professor Kane only heard about Ping from Professor Charles and Maureen, and maybe Dumbledore in the painting. No one else was familiar with what this dark wizard who lived in the painting was like. "Anyway, let's take this painting back first." To be on the safe side, Kane took down the painting, sealed it with a powerful confinement magic, and prepared to take it back to school to discuss with Principal McGonagall. Chapter 340 Continue the game. Professor Raffle of Durmstrang was found in the telephone booth lounge. He was knocked unconscious. After being rescued, he was surprised to hear that Zimmerman had performed dark magic. But what was even more surprising was that Raffle seemed to have suffered severe memory damage and didn't even understand how he got here. He must be pretending to be confused, this bastard. He let his students perform dark magic so blatantly. Did he think he could get away with it by pretending to be crazy? He's too naive. I will make him pay the price. Professor Kane angrily protested to the Ministry of Magic's Academic Research Society. O'Neill hurried over and said that he would definitely investigate the matter seriously. Don't worry, Raffle and Zimmerman have been controlled by the Aurors. We will give everyone a satisfactory explanation. At present, they both seem to have no memory of what they have done. Maybe it's the amnesia spell. The matter has not been clarified yet. Faced with the angry Professor Kane, O'Neill could only persuade him patiently. As a professor with considerable experience in Hogwarts, Professor Kane is very prestigious in the wizarding world. After all, many wizards in the UK were taught by him, and President O'Neill did not dare to neglect him. In addition, there was indeed a problem with this matter. When Zimmerman used black magic, even the referee was too late to stop it. O'Neill could not fool around with this matter. Isn't it clear yet? In order to win, the student of Durmstrang used very despicable and dirty means. He almost killed my student. Professor Kane stood in front of O'Neill. Although he was half a head shorter than him, he was not big at all and would not compromise so easily. I have already questioned the fairness and safety of this competition. I don't want my students to have any more accidents. There won't be any more accidents, I can guarantee it. Next, before going on stage, the contestants will be strictly searched with magic. Except for the wand, nothing is allowed. O'Neill vowed. In fact, there was no such body search in the past, mainly because once the participating students used black magic in the competition, they would not be able to escape the eyes of the referee, and they would be directly disqualified from the competition. No student was willing to take this risk for victory. It was the first time that they encountered a student like Zimmerman who knowingly committed a crime and ignored the result of the competition. The game should continue? Can the game continue after such a thing happened? Professor Kane frowned. Do you know that this may be related to the conspiracy of Lucas who is causing chaos everywhere? My students have already mentioned this. Professor Kane, this is too serious. There is no evidence to show that it is related to Lucas. O'Neill waved his hand quickly and smiled. It was just an ignorant student who took the risk of using black magic to win the night. The game cannot be interrupted because of this. That would not be good. No casualties were caused that night. From Zimmerman's black magic to the long-armed bat's rampage, the whole process only took half an hour. The long-armed bats only caused chaos for 10 minutes before they suddenly died. Except for a few wizards who suffered some insignificant injuries, it was nothing serious. O'Neill did not want to end today's game because of this little episode, otherwise many wizard audiences would make a fuss and demand a refund. Those sponsors of the game would also protest and withdraw their investment. If compensation was paid, it would be a huge loss, which would have a great impact on the reputation of the Ministry of Magic Academic Research Association. O'Neill could only whisper in a reasonable way, Professor Kane, you should also know that there are two crucial games today, both of which are related to Hogwarts. It is rare for Hogwarts to have such a good result this year, and we should cherish it. After all, this is the Dumbledore Cup competition, and we all graduated from Hogwarts, right? If there's anything, we can wait until the game is over. What do you think? The people from the Ministry of Magic were already repairing the venue. For wizards, that level of damage was not a big deal. The wizards present were all highly skilled in magic, and it only took about 10 minutes to repair the messy venue and the stage. Many wizard spectators were shouting excitedly. Even though Zimmerman used black magic, his contest with Maureen was undoubtedly the most exciting tonight. Everyone bought tickets to watch this game just for the sake of novelty. When the long-armed bat appeared, the atmosphere of the entire game was pushed to a climax. Maureen, the youngest contestant, was like a rising star that instantly became the focus of the audience. Many wizard headhunters began to exchange information and prepare to investigate the origin of this person. It was not difficult to get information about Maureen. He was a pure-blood wizard, and Alton was a staff member of the Ministry of Magic. Before Maureen went to school, he often followed Alton around the Ministry of Magic and was soon recognized by some people. Professor Kane was indeed somewhat moved by what O'Neill said. In the Dumbledore Cup competition, Hogwarts had not entered the top 3 for 3 years and had not won the first-place trophy for 5 years. This year, Maureen defeated Durmstrang with fair means and created the most promising year. The next contestant was only one from Boxburton School. So close to the first-place trophy, Professor Kane had no reason to withdraw from the competition. But he stood on the standpoint of his students and felt that he still needed to ensure the safety of his students. Although the first place in the Dumbledore Cup was of great significance to Hogwarts, Professor Kane was a very responsible teacher. For him, the safety of students should be the first priority under any circumstances. Professor Kane was still hesitant, and Maureen said beside him, "Professor, I can continue to participate in the competition, don't worry." If President O'Neill said so, then the same thing will definitely not happen again. Maureen knew what Professor Kane was worried about. As long as he said he could participate in the next competition, Professor Kane would not have to make things difficult. In addition, without Zimmerman, Hogwarts had a great chance to win the championship, and Maureen felt that he could not miss this opportunity this year. O'Neill could not help but look at Maureen behind Professor Kane. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Maureen, as the youngest student, relied on his extremely outstanding magic level to subdue Zimmerman even when Zimmerman violated the rules, and won the title. Now he is speaking for him, and he is very happy. "Okay, if my students have no objection." Professor Kane's expression relaxed a little, "but if there is anything wrong, the game must be stopped." "For sure." O'Neill rubbed his hands, fiddled with his shiny hair, turned his head to look at the excited audience, and said, "Then the next game will start in half an hour. Everyone can't wait to see how this rising star performs next. I won't disturb you. I will communicate with other referees first. I wish you good results." O'Neill left happily. This kind of competition itself is linked to commercial interests, not like the Triwizard Tournament, which is purely for the honor of the school. It would be best to be able to continue, otherwise the losses would be heavy. Chapter 341 The Spirit of Dumbledore's Cup. Professor Kane patted Maureen on the shoulder and asked, "Are you feeling unwell? Although the championship is very important to us, it doesn't matter if you can't participate. Even if Webley loses in the end, we can at least get second and third place." "Professor, I'm fine." Maureen thought for a while, looked at Webley again, and then said, "We should be concerned about Webley now." "Okay, Webley, your next opponent is Beverly from Boxbuttons. I have observed her and she is a very strong opponent. Her magic level is extremely high, not even lower than Cecilia, who was second last year. You have to work hard." Professor Kane began to pull Webley aside and give him various instructions and lectures. Webley himself is also a very smart student. His magic level is quite superb. Compared with last year, it has improved by more than one level. "Professor, don't worry. I washed my hair 3 times when I went out today." Webley smiled and shook his hair. "My dad said that washing your hair more often will make you smarter. I only washed it once last year, and it was not energetic enough." Professor Kane shook his head helplessly. When the Dumbledore Cup competition resumed, the audience burst into warm applause again. Webley and Beverly were both dark horses this year, and it was not a small spectacle. Their competition was also quite exciting. The two had extremely high transfiguration skills. Although they did not break the rules and use all their magic skills like Maureen and Zimmerman, they perfectly interpreted the charm of transfiguration within the rules. Webley did not perform well last year, but after a year, he has made significant progress. Although he is a little neurotic, he still has the upper hand at the last moment and defeated Beverly from Boxbuttons. Professor Kane's face was full of joy. Now that the first and second place have been decided, Webley lived up to expectations and will compete with Maureen in the final. "Okay, the back of the hand and the palm are all flesh. I don't know what to say. Both of you have to go all out. It doesn't matter who wins. The important thing is to enjoy the game." Professor Kane looked at Maureen and Webley with satisfaction. Before today, he didn't even count on these two people. After all, the level of Constance and Pearson was the hope of winning the championship, and he always focused on them. But unexpectedly, Maureen broke through the siege quietly, and Webley also broke into the finals with a smirk. "Haha, great, Professor. After the game, can you treat us to a meal at the Greedy Witch?" Webley asked happily, "The kind that pays for all the dishes. You have to beat Maureen first." Professor Kane glared at Webley unhappily. They had a full meal at the Greedy Witch for lunch, and the various heavy-tasting menus that Webley ordered made everyone want to beat him. "Then Maureen won the championship. Can we go to the Greedy Witch, the kind that pays for all the dishes?" Webley asked excitedly again. "It's not Maureen, it's you. If you win, we'll go tomorrow," Professor Kane said helplessly. "Great, men." Webley came up to Maureen happily. "Are you looking forward to it too?" Maureen had been thinking about the black box and peeing. He didn't care about the competition at all. For him, Being good was more important. When Webley interrupted his thoughts, he raised his head and asked casually, "What did you say?" "I said," Webley waved the wand in his hand, dancing and saying, "the professor has agreed. No matter which of us wins, we will go to the Greedy Witch for another full banquet tomorrow." "That's not what I said." Professor Kane raised his voice. "This is what I understand." "Professor." Webley shook his head and said cheerfully, "You certainly don't want to be a professor who doesn't keep his word. In my heart, you have always been a kind, great, and good teacher who keeps his word and satisfies students' appetites." Professor Kane glared at Webley. "When did you learn to flatter?" "Great." The professor agreed. Webley's thinking logic jumped too much, and he pulled Maureen out without saying anything. "Let's go. The moment of deciding the winner has begun. We are all late." "Oh, are we late? Then let's go quickly." Maureen ran out absent-mindedly following Webley. "Hey, you two come back. The final will start in 10 minutes. Professor Kane waved his wand in the back and forcibly dragged the two stupid students back. "President O'Neill is going to give a speech before the final to mobilize the audience's emotions. It's not your turn yet, so don't make trouble." "Oh, it hasn't started yet." Maureen suddenly realized, found a seat to sit down, and thought about paying Gert again. Professor Kane was so amused by Webley and Maureen that he didn't know whether to scold them or praise them. He didn't know what to say about them. Of the two people from Hogwarts who made it to the finals, one was a big-headed person who spoke without thinking. He treated the competition like traveling. Winning or losing didn't matter to him. What mattered was having fun. He said all kinds of offensive words and was as lively as a Peeves. The other one didn't seem to know what a competition was at all. He only wanted to investigate all sorts of messed up things. When he didn't want to compete anymore, he said he wanted to give up. But he suddenly wanted to compete again halfway through, and then he sent Constance, the best player in Hogwarts, home. It was just like a child throwing a tantrum, doing whatever he wanted. Now that he has made it to the finals, he looks absent-minded again. Is it true that only students like these two can win Dumbledore's trophy for our Hogwarts students? Professor Kane couldn't figure it out. Hogwarts hadn't won the championship for many years, and the atmosphere of the GHRS club had always been a little off. Elites like Constance and Pearson all have an inexplicable arrogance, looking down on those who are weaker than themselves, and looking at opponents from other schools with disdain. The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. Constance and Pearson both have high magical talents. Before participating in the competition every year, they always have a kind of "I am the only one" confidence in the championship, but none of them has achieved good results in the Dumbledore Cup. In this club, only Maureen, Magatha and Webley are different. One is a restless genius student who doesn't take the competition seriously, one is a girl who dares to break into the men's toilet for magic research, and the other is a guy with abnormal brain circuits but very smart. And now, the one who will hold the trophy is either Maureen, who doesn't care about the competition, or Webley, whose thinking leaps too fast for others to keep up. Is this the true spirit of the Dumbledore Cup? Professor Kane couldn't help thinking. When he was studying at Hogwarts, Dumbledore was still the headmaster of Hogwarts. At that time, Headmaster Dumbledore had a very high prestige. He could have been the Minister of Magic, but he refused the position. He was also very casual at school. In the opening ceremony, he would casually say a few incomprehensible words such as idiot, crybaby, scum, twist. No one could figure out what was going on in Headmaster Dumbledore's wise mind. Everyone said that he was a genius wizard who was indifferent to fame and fortune, good at thinking, and a little crazy. This seemed to be reflected in Maureen and Webley. It seems that after returning, I have to reflect on the meaning of the existence of the GHRS club. Professor Kane looked at Webley, who was dancing, and Maureen, who was yawning undistracted, and then looked at Pearson and Constance, who were sitting in the corner without saying a word, and then nodded thoughtfully. In recent years, the elites who participated in the Dumbledore Cup at Hogwarts all came from the GHRS club, which had a slightly distorted atmosphere. These elites obviously had top magic skills, but they were always unable to take back the first-place trophy of the Dumbledore Cup, as if they were blocked by an invisible big hand. But Professor K now vaguely figured out what this invisible big hand was. Chapter 342, An Insignificant Game. The final match of the Dumbledore Cup attracted everyone's attention. All the audience cheered enthusiastically. When Maureen and Webley came on stage, the audience's emotions almost reached a peak. But the two people on the stage, One was laughing and the other seemed to be distracted. Even when the referee shouted start, it seemed that the two did not react. It was not until Professor Kane shouted from the audience, "Are you still going to have a full banquet?" that the two focused their attention. "Come on, men. I washed my hair 3 times today." Webbery waved his wand and rubbed his hands. "Oh no." Maureen shrugged and laughed. "I forgot to wash my hair." He knew what the result of this game would be. This was an insignificant game. When O'Neill, the president of the Ministry of Magic Academic Research Association, shouted the final winner, a voice in the audience shouted excitedly, "That's my son." "That's right. I said before the game that my son would win." Harris was so excited that he was incoherent, because he washed his hair 3 times today. Maureen stretched out his arms in the audience. Today's game was finally over. Next, he had to think about how to deal with Lucas. "Why did you stop on purpose?" Magatha asked in confusion. "I don't know what you are talking about." Maureen was applauding for Webbery. He looked at Magatha in confusion. "Aren't you applauding? When Webbery trapped you with stones, you should have been able to get out." Magatha also clapped her hands. Her applause was very casual. She kept looking at Maureen with a frown. "I felt that Webbery's stones couldn't do anything to you at that time." "No, I couldn't get out. Webbery was very powerful." Maureen thought for a while, and asked again, "Why do you feel it again? You are an arithmetic fortune teller and shouldn't rely on feelings." Magatha stomped her feet again and said reluctantly, "You're right, I don't believe in feelings." The final was very exciting. Maureen and Webbery were really fighting. The two used superb transformation skills to collide fiercely for nearly 10 minutes, which feasted the eyes of the audience. In the end, Webbery trapped Maureen with stones, and Maureen did not break free. Everyone felt sorry for Maureen, thinking that he lost because of the injury he suffered in the fight with Zimmerman. However, Professor Kane came over and patted Maureen on the shoulder, looking at him with a complicated look. "Sometimes I don't know what you are thinking." Professor Kane smiled. Of course, he could see that in the first 10 minutes, Maureen and Webbery had fought back and forth, fully respecting their opponent and the game, but later Maureen chose to stop. "I didn't think much, Professor. Webbery washed his hair 3 times today. It would be unreasonable if he didn't win the championship." Maureen grinned and laughed. "Didn't you say that? To find a job, you need this certificate or that certificate. Webbery is in the 6th grade and needs to consider a job. I'm only in the 2nd grade, so I'm not in a hurry to find a job." "Hey, you're right. This award is really important to Webbery." Professor Kane finally understood why Maureen did this, "But do you really think it's better to do this? It's not bad to win the 2nd place in the Dumbledore Cup." Maureen spread his hands. "No matter who wins, the champion belongs to Hogwarts. It's better than the results in previous years, isn't it?" "That's right, haha." Professor Kane's eyebrows trembled with joy again. He knew that if Maureen really wanted to win the Dumbledore Cup, no one would compete with him next year if nothing unexpected happened. When the top 3 contestants of the Dumbledore Cup walked onto the podium, everyone in the audience cheered. Maureen won the 2nd place and deserved it. Compared to Webbery, everyone remembered the name Maureen Walker more at night, so that when Alton hurried to the stadium, he was suddenly recognized by someone, and then he was inexplicably surrounded. 2nd place. Oh my God. Alton finally squeezed out from those acquaintances, ran to Maureen, picked up Maureen and shook her around. The competition was over when he arrived. Although he didn't see Maureen's competition process, he was so excited to hear that his grandson won the 2nd place in the Elite Dumbledore Cup. "Grandpa, it's okay." Maureen muttered, "Don't be so excited, I'm dizzy." Originally, Alton and Professor Kane thought that Maureen, a 2nd-year student, was here to gain experience, and he didn't have much hope, but who would have thought that Maureen, who came to gain experience, would instead let everyone gain experience? Amazing. "I didn't know you had this ability. Tell Grandpa, how did you beat your opponent?" Alton was extremely proud of Maureen's achievements. "That's something to say, Alton." Professor Kane said happily beside him. "Maureen's 2nd place tonight is not just a simple matter." "Yes, Grandpa, it's true." Maureen remembered Lucas's matter, and he had to tell Grandpa about it. The Dumbledore Cup match was over, and it was already past 9 o'clock in the evening. Professor Kane didn't rush back to school. He decided to give everyone a day off tomorrow and take them out for a walk. They stayed in the Leaky Cauldron in Diagon Alley, and Alton followed them. Professor Kane insisted on paying for Alton's room. "This is what I should do, Alton." Professor Kane was very generous. "The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar." "No, Professor, I'll pay. I'll pay. I never knew there was a bonus for the first place, ha ha ha." Webbery happily took out a handful of golden galleons from his bag and gave them to the boss. The first place prize was 900 galleons. He was so happy that he paid for everyone's room. Professor Kane thought about it, looked at Maureen again, and said, "Yes, you should pay for Mr. Walker." The top 3 Dumbledore Cup winners not only received certificates, but also bonuses. Even the second place winner received 600 gold coins, and the third place winner received 400. Because it was held once a year, the bonus was not much. Maureen was also quite surprised when he found out that he got 600 gold coins. He was usually very lucky to have a dozen gold coins in his pocket. Webbery also treated everyone to a sumptuous dinner. He wanted to order some wine, but was glared back by Professor Kane. After dinner, Maureen returned to the room. They booked a double room with 2 beds. Maureen and Alton lived in the same room. Then Professor Kane knocked on the door and told Alton what happened that night. Alton was shocked. Alton dragged Maureen up and checked her without saying anything. After making sure that Maureen had no hair missing, he asked solemnly, "Is it Lucas?" "Maureen, are you sure?" "It's him, Grandpa, I saw it all," Maureen said. He told the details of the Muggle Opera House, and then asked, "Grandpa, what do you think?" Maureen went there with Alton during the summer vacation. He felt it necessary to ask his grandfather to help investigate the matter. "How can I see it?" "I'll sit here and see it." Alton was frightened after hearing Maureen's description, and he criticized Maureen first. "How could you? You might lose your life." "It's like this, Maureen, you shouldn't run around all the time." Professor Kane had the same attitude as Alton, and mentioned Maureen's trip to the Forbidden Forest, and then Alton criticized Maureen again. Maureen sighed. He always forgot the consequences of telling the truth. Chapter 343 Magic Detection. "You mean the monster didn't come out of the box?" Professor Kane asked doubtfully. "I can't be sure. The black box is more like a passage. I need it to work." Maureen remembered what Zimmerman said. The other party deliberately let him get the black box for this purpose. He pondered for a moment and asked, "Have you seen this kind of monster before?" Professor Kane and Alton looked at each other. "I have never seen this kind of monster. I don't remember any monster that can't be hurt by magic." Professor Kane shook his head. "The long-armed bats at night are very powerful. They can let the spell pass through the body. Only when they attack can they have a chance to attack. Even the experienced Professor Kane has never heard of such a strange magical creature." Alton didn't see the specific scene at night, so he couldn't comment. Maureen wanted to ask about the Invisible Man, but when he thought of the warning of the Bloody Baron, he swallowed his words again. "Oh, this thing." Maureen took out a little more black powder from the bottle and handed it to them. "This is yesterday." Maureen found that Alton's face was stern again. He smiled awkwardly and said, "The magic that the old witch used on me, she used magic on a retractable ear, but the magic was actually transmitted to this ear. You still keep it." Professor Kane was surprised. "I thought you gave it all to Fast. I think it's wiser to keep some. You can help identify it. This is the best." Maureen actually secretly kept half of it. The rest was prepared for Arnag to see. After all, the old witch knew Arnag and his wife, and maybe Arnag knew the old witch. He had to investigate this matter from many aspects. Whether it was Arnag, Professor Kane, or his grandfather who often dealt with black magic, they were all familiar with black magic. If all were handed over to the Ministry of Magic, even if Fast and the others found out, they might not write a letter to tell Maureen the results. Both Alton and Professor Kane took out their wands and whispered a few detection spells. The magic they used was very advanced. Even Maureen had not learned these detection spells. Although Maureen was better than other students in transfiguration and charms, his experience in magic was far less than that of Professor Kane and Alton. He knew very well that if he met wizards like Professor Kane and Alton in the transfiguration competition, he would probably not last more than 2 minutes. "What is this gray spell used for?" "Specially used to detect black magic induction spells." "What about this purple one?" "It is used to test corrosive magic." "What about the return to the origin magic?" "That is only useful for ordinary black magic." Maureen asked beside him very eagerly. He did not have much experience in dealing with black magic. The defense against the dark magic taught in school was too shallow. It was completely useless when encountering real black magic. He must learn more about the identification of black magic, which will definitely be useful in the future. Half an hour later, Professor Kane and Alton's faces became heavy. What's wrong? Do you know who that old witch is? Maureen asked impatiently. You're lucky. Professor Kane glanced at Maureen, and his voice didn't sound optimistic. Lucky? Maureen was puzzled. Alton glared at Maureen angrily. The other party has shown mercy. If this black magic is really fully unleashed, you will have to stay in St. Mungo's hospital. Maureen opened his mouth. I don't understand. Why would the crazy woman you mentioned show mercy? She actually deliberately suppressed this black magic to prevent you from getting hurt. Professor Kane picked up a few drops of powder with his wand, and these black powders floated in the air, looking very strange. She should be able to let the monster out at night, or for some other ulterior purpose. Maureen guessed. Lucas said that the time was not right, so he didn't choose to catch him directly. I guess this is the reason for showing mercy. Maureen also told Professor Kane and Alton what the old witch and Lucas said at that time, and then asked, can you guess the identity of the old witch based on this black magic? Professor Kane and Alton looked at each other. Then Maureen was criticized again. Don't do such dangerous things again. Alton said angrily. I won't do it anymore. Maureen muttered softly. Promise. Should I? Maureen said uncertainly. Alton knocked Maureen's head unhappily. There's no way to track it. The crazy woman you mentioned has some tricks. Maybe we can ask Magatha to take a look. Professor Kane shook his head. Magatha has seen it, but she can't figure it out. Oh, by the way, that old witch is a very powerful arithmetic fortune teller. She is very old, and the wrinkles on her face are like wrinkled horsemen are piled together. Do you have any impression of this person? Maureen has a very deep memory of the old witch. The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. You can show us your memory. Alton said, your description is too abstract. Okay, if you want to see it, Grandpa, but it may not work. Maureen did not object to Maureen's suggestion. Maureen was the person he trusted the most, so it didn't matter if he saw a memory or something. But he felt that this method was useless. After all, even Payanger couldn't spy on his memory. Recall the scene carefully. Alton pointed his wand at Maureen's forehead. I just need to draw out the appearance of that crazy witch. Maureen imagined seeing the old witch in the Muggle Opera House, and he recalled the experience at that time. 2 minutes later, the tip of Maureen's wand was empty. What's the matter? Don't you have any memory? Maureen waved his wand in confusion, and no memory was drawn out. Maureen spread his hands. He actually wanted to draw the old witch, but his drawing skills were terrible. If he was asked to draw an old witch, he could only draw a face, 3 hairs, and 2 waves on the forehead as wrinkles. He might also draw a few circles or something. The old witch's wrinkles were just piled up. He was a soul painter. Arnold asked him to learn painting last time, but unfortunately he had no talent for it and could only make the people in the painting move. I'll ask Magatha if she can show us her memory. Professor Kane thought of Magatha's joining in the fun last time, so he got up and called Magatha. Magatha had changed into very strange unicorn pajamas. The pajamas even had hooves on the palms, and there was a horn on the hat, which was very interesting to see swaying back and forth. I like unicorns. Magatha noticed that Maureen was staring at her, so she moved the horn on her head, and the horn made a soft unicorn cry. This horn can help me sleep. Maureen found that Magatha, who always pestered her, was still very cute when she combed her messy hair, but she didn't pay much attention to her appearance, so her hair was messy. Very good. Maureen looked at Magatha and said. Magatha looked at Maureen suspiciously, then immediately took out a Maureen research manual from her pocket and quickly wrote down what Maureen had just said. Maureen praised the unicorn's pajamas for being very good. Maybe unicorns have some profound meaning to him. Note, go back and review all the knowledge about unicorns. Oh, I didn't praise the pajamas. Maureen shrugged helplessly. Chapter 344 Different Memories. Magatha's memory was extracted by Professor Kane, and a wisp of white smoke floated in the air. Do you have a pensieve or something? Maureen asked. No, I have memory paper here. Alton took out a piece of white paper from his pocket and spread it out. There were some complex magic symbols on the edge of the paper. He explained, it is often used to deal with certain wizard suspects. Extract their memories and take a look. Professor Kane put Magatha's memory on the memory paper, and the memory quickly merged into the white paper. Then those memories were like paint, automatically spread out on the white paper, forming the appearance of two people, just like the illustrations in ordinary books. This kind of memory paper can't let people experience realistic memories like they conceive, but can only see a rough flat image. Maureen was soon surprised. Wait, Magatha, are you seeing it right? The old witch and Lucas shown on the memory paper are not the same two people as he saw. It was true that the old witch in Magatha's memory was also an old witch, but she didn't have so many wrinkles, and she wore a green wizard hat, and her clothes had many arithmetic divination symbols that Magatha usually wrote on them. Lucas was a middle-aged man with a thick brown beard, and he looked nothing like the real Lucas. No, I saw these two. Magatha was very sure. Maureen realized that the old witch had used a strange arithmetic divination magic on Magatha to conceal their original appearance. This arithmetic divination magic was ineffective for Maureen, but it could deceive Magatha. No wonder the Ministry of Magic couldn't find Lucas after searching for so long. It turned out to be because of that old witch. Maureen pondered that this mysterious arithmetic fortune teller might have deceived the magic staff of the Department of Mysteries in the Ministry of Magic. Perhaps no one except Maureen knew the true face of the old witch. This is a problem. Maureen can't tell Alton and Professor Kane what he saw, and what others saw was fake. It is almost impossible to catch these two people. What you saw is different from what Magatha saw. This crazy woman is so powerful. Alton felt that this matter was very tricky. If this arithmetic fortune teller could use her superb arithmetic magic to change her appearance, then even if she stood in front of the Ministry of Magic staff, she might not be recognized. It seems that I must practice painting when I go back. Maureen found that he was not good at painting. He tried to condense the appearance of the old witch with sand, but unfortunately, using magic to make sand sculptures also requires artistic cells. He couldn't even make sand sculptures, and he needed to reflect deeply. Now the only people who can find out the identity of the old witch are Arnok and Mrs. Rhea, who is a fortune teller. There is no better way. Professor Kane and Alton didn't come to any conclusion after discussion. The Ministry of Magic's Department of Magical Creatures can only investigate the long-armed bat. Although the long-armed bat self-immolated and disappeared after death, many spectators at the scene must have brought magic cameras and must have left some photos. For wizards, photos are moving, so they can see the monster's appearance clearly. Then I won't disturb your rest. Professor Kane looked at the time, stood up and looked at Maureen, and said meaningfully, I think you won't run around at night anymore, right? Maureen laughed dryly and looked at Alton. Even if he wanted to run at night, he couldn't run away. Grandpa would definitely use magic to watch him. Alton got up and sent Professor Kane and Magatha out, then closed the door and said, Sleep well, do what you should do tomorrow. Don't make trouble again. I'll go to the opera house to see what's going on. I'll go with you. I'm more familiar with that place. You're not allowed to go. Alton said without question, then waved his wand and cast a spell on Maureen's quilt. The quilt immediately moved, wrapped Maureen like a mummy, and then threw Maureen onto the bed. This will make it much more peaceful. Alton snorted. At least let me go to the toilet first. Maureen couldn't help but mutter. He couldn't even move his hands and feet, so he could only roll around on the bed. Alton had taken his wand away, and he couldn't break the magic by himself. I can sleep well tonight. After breakfast the next day, Alton was ready to leave. Maureen still couldn't get Alton to agree to take him there, no matter how hard he tried. Alton forbade Maureen to go to such dangerous places again. I'll write to you when I get the result. Alton bit the last bite of the sandwich. If you run around again, I'll... Wait, let me think about it. Alton was thinking about how to make Maureen obedient, but he had never really lost his temper with Maureen, let alone beat her. Because Maureen's parents were not around, he had always doted on Maureen in various ways, and verbal promises had no binding force on Maureen, so for a while he couldn't think of how to make Maureen behave. Actually, Grandpa, if I follow you, I can point it out to you. I'll have Professor Kane put you in solitary confinement. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Alton thought for a long time and finally came up with a threat. He didn't want to listen to Maureen's bargaining at all. He snapped his fingers and said happily, Yes, I'll put you in solitary confinement and punish you to write sentences. Write 100 or 200 sentences like I will listen to Grandpa and the professor in the future, love Grandpa forever, and never cause trouble for Grandpa. Writing sentences is not a threat. Maureen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You have to send it to me after you finish writing it," Alton added cheerfully. He was very satisfied with the thread he thought of. Professor Kane gave everyone a holiday, and he would accompany them wherever they wanted to go. Webley had no concept of money. He strolled around the entire Diagon Alley with his bag full of gold galleons clattering. He originally wanted to run to Nocturne Alley, but was dragged back by Professor Kane. "Professor, I heard there's a footbath city there, which is served by Vila herself," Webley said excitedly, patting his wallet. "Think about it. Vila are beautiful, and they provide attentive service. They can meet any requirements. I invite everyone to go there. That is the red light district of wizards." Magatha said seriously, "Minors cannot go there." "What is a red light district?" Webley asked curiously. "Why can't we hang yellow lights?" Professor Kane's face was dark. He forcibly pulled Webley away with his magic wand and warned, "Thank God when you can learn some common sense in life." Professor Kane pulled the group to Flourish and Blot's bookstore. Looking at the warm fragrance of books, he clapped his hands and smiled kindly. "I think we should travel here in the morning. It's good for the brain." The bookstore is really a very suitable place for students to travel. Everyone looked at each other and walked into the bookstore helplessly. Fortunately, everyone in the club can read, so they are not opposed to bookstores. In addition to Webley, Maureen was also monitored by Professor Kane throughout the whole process, so that he would not disappear from sight. Maureen walked towards the shelf selling magic newspapers and magazines. He wanted to see if there were any wizards who knew what the monster was last night. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 345 Magic Newspaper. Today's wizard newspapers are rich and varied. Unlike before when there was only the Daily Prophet, Maureen glanced over and saw a row of various newspapers: Quidditch Morning News, Magic News, The Quibbler, Magic Gossip, and many other interesting newspapers, as well as many other magazines. Maureen's family usually subscribes to Quidditch and magical academic magazines. He learned a lot of knowledge from academic magazines before, but his family didn't subscribe to the Daily Prophet because Alton didn't like it. However, the Daily Prophet is still the only one that dominates. The Daily Prophet likes to criticize the Ministry of Magic from time to time and publish some panic-stricken remarks. If someone uses dark magic in the game, this is a rare opportunity for them to discredit. Sure enough, Maureen saw the report about yesterday's Dumbledore Cup in the first section, but the fact that 2 Hogwarts students took the top 2 places was only summarized in a few words, and even the introduction of the youngest contestant Maureen was only 2 lines. The focus of the news was all on Durmstrang Zimmerman using black magic. There was also a color photo on it. Many wizards were running around in panic on the field, and they kept firing spells into the air. When Maureen saw this picture, he felt a little strange, because the wizards in the photo were casting spells into the air, but the place where the long-armed bat should have appeared in the photo did not appear. Did any reporter take a picture of this monster? Maureen clicked on the picture, and then he saw Professor Kane throwing him to the ground. At that time, the long-armed bat was about to attack them, but there was no shadow of the monster in the photo. Maureen thought for a moment that the camera was broken, otherwise how could it not be captured at this angle? He continued to read the article. According to rumors, in the Dumbledore Cup Transfiguration competition yesterday, Zimmerman, the Durmstrang player who won the first place last year, actually openly defied the rules in this competition and used black magic on the students of Hogwarts. At the competition, Zimmerman released a very powerful dark magic creature that had never been seen in the wizarding world, and the photographers at the scene did not take any images of the creature. But according to feedback from some viewers, they all saw this huge bat monster, which was subdued only after the bat monster made the Ministry of Magic staff embarrassed. It exploded. The whole body was blown into pieces, and then burned by the dark magic flames without a single piece of armor left. A wizard who did not want to be named swore to a reporter that the scene at the time restored the entire process of the dark magic rampage to the greatest extent. Unfortunately, no one took a picture of this monster, so we can preliminarily determine that this is just a magic phantom condensed by black magic. This kind of black magic is very rare. The magic phantom condensed can be so realistic that it can be seen by human eyes, but it cannot be captured by magic cameras. It can only wait until the black magic dissipates by itself. We interviewed President O'Neill of the Ministry of Magic Academic Research Association overnight last night and asked him why he was helpless against this monster that suddenly appeared. President O'Neill refused to disclose more details, insisting that everything was under control and looking at the matter with an evasive mentality, which made us doubt the overall quality of the Ministry of Magic staff again. Fake and real. Maureen set his eyes on a line of introduction in the news. This is just a magical phantom condensed by black magic, and the condensed magical phantom can reach the point where it is fake and real. Is it really like this? Maureen didn't know if this statement was correct. If it was true, it would be very similar. Many black magics can produce various powerful effects. If there is any black magic that can really construct a kind of phantom that is fake and real, Maureen would not doubt it. It's just that he always feels very strange, because every time he meets those people with shining eyes, they don't seem to be fake. Maureen continued to read on, but the Daily Prophet didn't care about who won the championship or who used black magic. The whole report that followed was criticizing the Ministry of Magic's problems, and even shifted from this competition to criticizing the treatment of Dementors in Azkaban, which was completely irrelevant. The Daily Prophet is a newspaper that wants nothing but chaos in the world and can't find a black spot for the Ministry of Magic. It always likes to exaggerate news about the magic world and fan conspiracy theories. Such a newspaper has a large sales volume, which is very rare. He threw the Daily Prophet aside and picked up other newspapers. Most newspapers reported on this section, among which the Magic Gossip magazine had its own news attitude. They have already dug up the origins of Webbery Charles and Maureen Walker, and spent a huge amount of space to report some of the outstanding transformation talents of these two people, as well as close-up photos of the two of them on the podium. They focused on the space that Hogwarts finally broke into the top 3 this year, and fully respected the Dumbledore Cup competition. But these reports are not what Maureen wants. What he wants to know is more detailed information about the long-armed bat. Yesterday, so many experienced wizard headhunters saw the long-armed bat, including many outstanding wizard talents in the magic world, but it seems that everyone regards it as a non-existent creature created by black magic, and many newspapers think so. Maureen browsed through many newspapers in succession, and was stopped by a fat wizard with small eyes. "Please make way, I want to put the newspapers outside the store for people who really want to buy to see." The wizard with small eyes took out his wand from his pocket, pointed at the newspaper rack, and floated the newspaper rack up, then complained, "Customers like you who only look but don't buy will make it impossible to sell newspapers." "Sorry." Maureen quickly stepped aside, feeling a little embarrassed. The wizard clerk threw the newspaper rack to the left of the door with a bang, but because he was too strong, all the newspapers fell to the ground with a clatter. The wizard clerk looked very upset, and flicked his wand again, and all the newspapers flew up from the ground, and were rearranged in a pile. The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. Then he cast a sight-blocking spell on each newspaper. This spell can specifically limit the time of flipping through the newspaper. When a customer is concentrating on reading a certain news article, the spell will block the rest of the page, making it impossible for the customer to read on and have to spend money to buy it. The wizard clerk seemed to have a bad temper and kept complaining about something. At this time, the fireplace in the bookstore lit up with emerald green flames, and a stack of new magic magazines had appeared in the fireplace. "This one is actually published today, it's really rare." The wizard clerk waved his wand and threw the new magic magazine in the fireplace onto the newspaper rack. This magazine was not thick, only a thin stack. The cover of the magazine was printed with golden words "Fantastic Beasts and Here." If you look closely, you will find that these fonts are made up of golden caterpillars, and the caterpillars are still crawling. Maureen glanced at the cover of the magazine, which also had a photo of the commotion at the Dumbledore Cup competition, and a simple illustration next to it, which was the long-armed bat. Chapter 346, Abyss Monster. This long-armed bat was not a photo, but a drawing by a wizard painter. Some details were not clearly drawn, and it was roughly 70% similar. However, compared to other newspapers that did not even capture a shadow, it was already very impressive to be able to draw it. This drawn long-armed bat was still bumping around on the magazine cover, trying to rush out of the magazine fiercely, looking very irritable. The title of the magazine cover was, "Abyss Monster Attacks, This Is Not Black Magic." This title immediately aroused Maureen's interest. He browsed many newspapers, and each newspaper regarded the monster that appeared last night as Zimmerman using black magic, but this new magazine actually proposed the theory that this was not black magic. When Maureen was about to read on, he found that the wizard clerk was standing at the door with a magic wand, his hands on his chest, his small bean-paced eyes narrowed into a slit, and he had been staring at him for a long time. "I'll buy this one." Maureen immediately took out a gold galleon and bought a magic magazine. The clerk's expression improved a little. He opened the drawer and took great pains to change 2 silver sickles for Maureen. Then he looked at Maureen suspiciously and said, "Why do I feel like you look familiar? I seem to have seen you somewhere this morning." "Oh, passers-by look like me." Maureen hurriedly took the magazine and sat on the sofa in the corner. He couldn't wait to turn to the page about the long-armed monster. The long-armed bat that appeared on the Dumbledore Cup yesterday caused a commotion. President O'Neill of the Ministry of Magic's Academic Research Association explained at the post-match press conference last night that the monster was a dark magic summoned by Durmstrang's students for the competition. But this statement is not credible. According to the information of Scamander's Institute of Magical Creatures, it is speculated that this is a monster from the Abyss. They really exist, not dark magic, and are led to the Dumbledore Cup by someone in an unusual way. The Abyss Zone is a theoretical magical place. At present, there is almost no research on this place, but according to Mr. Scamander, an experienced expert in magical creature research, various ferocious abyss monsters live here. This monster looks different from the various magical creatures we have seen. It is more like a chaotic hybrid and only appears at night. They should not appear in our place. Now that they have broken the routine, they are likely to bring chaos to the order of the magic world. We call on the Ministry of Magic to thoroughly investigate this matter and not to hastily cover it up as black magic. Please remember that this is not black magic, but a monster from the Abyss. Regarding more monsters from the Abyss, we are still looking for more reliable evidence. Please continue to pay attention to our information. If there is more progress, we will release it as soon as possible. Note, the illustrations are hand-drawn by the audience's memory, not captured by the magic camera, for reference only. The author of the article and illustrations, Virginia Scamander. This article does not describe the process of the Dumbledore Cup competition and the winners in detail, but only focuses on the origin of this long-armed bat monster and warns everyone that this is not black magic. Different newspapers and magazines have different focuses on the Dumbledore Cup. Some newspapers focus on the winners of the competition, while some focus on finding loopholes in the Ministry of Magic. The focus of the magazine Fantastic Beasts and Here is very unique. They treat the monsters as real creatures and draw them, while other newspapers do not do this. This surprised Maureen very much. The report mentioned some words such as abyss monster, which were very unfamiliar to Maureen. However, the description of the monster's characteristics in the article was surprisingly similar to what Maureen saw. It only came out at night. So I ran to a place that only existed in theory. Maureen felt a little unbelievable. He often ran to that place from time to time, and then saw all kinds of strange creatures at night. He had never figured it out, but now he finally had some clues. However, there was no more introduction about this theoretical place in the article. It only gave it a name, which was equivalent to saying nothing. He had to get more information about this place. Maureen stood up and walked towards the counter. The wizard shop assistant was using magic to clean the marks on several magic books. While cleaning, he complained angrily, "Next time I see someone sticking boogers in the mouths of illustrated characters, I will kill him." Some marks on the books could not be completely removed, so he threw the entire book into a bucket. The bucket contained a greasy decontamination liquid specially used to clean the stains on books. "Do you want to buy a book?" When the wizard shop assistant saw Maureen, he thought of how many newspapers Maureen had read for free just now, and he was a little dissatisfied. "Oh, it's this magazine. Can I subscribe to this magazine?" Maureen showed the Fantastic Beasts and Here magazine to the wizard shop assistant. He needed to pay attention to the next report of this magazine to see if he could get more information about this abyss monster. Subscription? Great, that's still a bit conscientious. The wizard clerk took the cleaned books out of the bucket and threw them aside. He looked a little happier, then glanced at the magazine in Maureen's hand, frowned again, and said disappointedly, "It's Fantastic Beasts and Here, a publication that is even less reliable than the Quibbler." "What's wrong with this magazine?" Maureen asked curiously. "Is the content untrue? The latest novels are first published on Liu 9 Shuba." "That's not the case. This magazine tells the most cutting-edge knowledge about magical creatures. It's a very authoritative book about magical creatures. The wizard clerk pulled a notebook from the counter and took notes, saying as he wrote, "But it's irregular. When they're happy, they publish one a week. When they're unhappy, they publish one every 2 or 3 months. Last year, they even published a semi-annual issue. They published 2 issues a year. I don't know how they can survive with such a magazine. There's nothing to make money from. It's a miracle that they can publish it today." Maureen found it particularly fresh. A magazine that dares to publish at will is really willful. Maybe it has a mind at home? If a wizard subscribes to newspapers and magazines in a bookstore, the bookstore will definitely get a commission, but if a magazine like this that is published based on mood is published semi-annually, it will basically not get much. No wonder the clerk was unhappy when he saw Maureen ordering the magazine. If you buy it individually, it's 15 silver sickles per copy. The subscription price is 14 silver sickles per copy. This magazine is not a regular issue. The minimum subscription is 20 galleons. If there is a lottery at the end of the year, you may get an extra copy. Of course, the premise is that it will not be published half-yearly, otherwise you can subscribe for 10 years with this money. The wizard clerk had a deep grudge against this magazine. He handed Maureen an order form. After Maureen filled in his information, he counted out 20 galleons from the bag and gave them to the clerk. He was going to give these 600 gold coins to his grandfather for safekeeping, but Alton let Maureen do it himself. When it comes to money, Alton has always been very generous to Maureen, not to mention that Maureen won this money himself. I hope this magazine can quickly find out the results of the investigation on the Abyss monster. Maureen has great hopes for Fantastic Beasts and Here. Chapter 347 The 10th Time. Professor Kane took everyone on a trip in the Sea of Books and promised to reimburse everyone for a book as a reward for winning the Dumbledore Cup this year. But I won't reimburse this kind of book. Webbery. Professor Kane snatched a copy of Wizard's Sweet Dreams Every Night magazine from Webbery's hand with a dark face and forced it back to the adult bookshelf. Why? Professor, didn't you ask me to learn some common sense? Magatha said that this row of bookshelves can tell me what a red light district is. Webbery looked puzzled. This is an adult book. The content inside is unhealthy. Wait until you are an adult before reading it. Professor Kane glared at Webbery unhappily. Professor, have you read it? No. Then why do you know that the content inside is unhealthy? God, what a bunch of nerds. Professor Kane couldn't help but take out his wand and knocked Webbery on the head. You can figure this out with your toes. Professor Kane felt that it was necessary to suggest to the principal whether he could offer an adult knowledge elective course to help students with negative emotional intelligence like Webbery and Magatha improve their brains, so as to avoid the imbalance of the development of these students' comprehensive qualities. Maureen walked towards the arithmetic divination bookshelf. Magatha was sitting on the ground flipping through a thick black-covered arithmetic magic book. The book was half the size of a person, and it was difficult to turn a page. Moreover, it looked like a magic folding version, and it might be even bigger if it was fully opened. Magartha, what are you reading? Maureen sat over and glanced at the symbols on the arithmetic book. Unfortunately, he had never been exposed to arithmetic divination and had no idea about these symbols. I'm looking for a way to defeat the old witch. Magatha said without raising her head. The old witch has used arithmetic magic to defeat me again and again, and I must defeat her. Don't be too discouraged. You are only in the 5th grade, and your magic level is limited. She has lived for many years. Maureen comforted. That won't work either. Magatha closed the book, stared at Maureen, and said seriously, I want to protect you. Hey, this sounded a little touching. Maureen said a little embarrassedly, actually, you don't have to. You are my experimental guinea pig, and only I can do the research. Magatha added. Maureen's face twitched, and the emotion that just emerged disappeared. By the way, can you help me calculate which book talks about monsters of the abyss and the like? Maureen asked. Magatha habitually took out the research manual, recorded Maureen's preferences, and then began to calculate for a long time, shaking her head and said, No, I can't figure out where this book is. Maybe you can go back to the school library to have a look. The books in the bookstore are very mixed. Some books are not reliable at all. They are all gimmicks and sell dog meat under the guise of sheep. Maureen was a little disappointed. Even the bookstore didn't have this kind of book, which was strange. Could it be that the cutting-edge people in this theoretical zone didn't have time to publish books? Just as he was about to ask Professor Kane, Alton suddenly hurried in from the door of the bookstore. I just heard that a group of students entered the bookstore. Alton looked very serious, waving at Maureen. There's something wrong with this matter. Lucas appeared again. Lucas appeared? The Muggle Opera House. Maureen ran over and asked. Yes. Alton shook his head. The Muggle Opera House was destroyed in Turmoil last night. Maureen didn't seem to be surprised by this result at all. It would be unreasonable if Lucas didn't destroy that place. Originally, I didn't want you to get involved in this matter, but there are many staff members of the Ministry of Magic gathered there now. A man named Fast said that you saw someone who was suspected to be Lucas yesterday, so he asked me to come to you. Alton was a little uneasy. He was reluctant for the people from the Ministry of Magic to come to Maureen, but Maureen did know some of the situation, and asked Professor Kane to tell Fast about this matter. If they wanted to track down Lucas' whereabouts, they had to rely on Maureen's help. I told them that you just saw it by chance. Alton patted Maureen on the shoulder. Anyway, come with me first. Don't worry about anything. I'll be right next to you. I'll go with you, and Magatha too. Professor Kane also came over and said, after all, they are my students, and I'm familiar with some of the staff at the Ministry of Magic. Alton didn't object, so Professor Kane asked Constance and the others to wait here first. Remember, you are not allowed to go to Nocturne Alley and Grey Worm Street. They came to the main road outside the Muggle Opera House. The two streets nearby were cordoned off. All Muggles were evacuated on the grounds of a gas explosion. There were many Ministry of Magic staff running around at the scene, testing for traces of magic. The Muggle Opera House was completely destroyed, shrunk into a big ball, and the surroundings were in a mess. A tall wizard walked towards Alton and the others. Anderson, from the Reversal of Incidents team. Oh, Professor Kane, you are here too. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Anderson politely greeted Professor Kane. After all, Professor Kane was a professor at Hogwarts and had taught many students, including Anderson. Yes, Anderson. Professor Kane nodded slightly. These two are also my students and must come. Anderson, Maureen is my grandson. I don't want to go through that set of procedures. Alton emphasized. I understand, Alton. Anderson held the notebook and looked at Maureen, trying to make his tone gentler. Then Maureen, tell me the details of the situation at that time, don't leave anything out, and then there's nothing else. Maureen simply said everything he could say, but he didn't mention some things he didn't understand, because he was more willing to believe Arnold. Magatha ran to the staff of the Department of Mysteries under the introduction of Professor Kane. She wanted to see through the disguise of the old witch with those who had experience in divination and arithmetic divination, and find out her own shortcomings. Although Magatha was a rare genius in arithmetic divination, she was still not good enough to be compared with the staff of the Department of Mysteries. She had only been exposed to arithmetic divination for 2 years, and her experience in magic handling alone was far inferior. Half an hour later, Maureen had said everything she should say. So that's how it is. Anderson hurriedly wrote down Maureen's words, and then said admiringly, by the way, you are really brave. No second-grade student. Anderson, this is not the time to praise. Alton frowned beside him. He would rather Maureen be a quiet child and not always encounter strange things. Sorry, Alton. Anderson smiled and put away the notebook. I mean, although it is brave, it is not recommended. If I have any questions next time, I will ask you again. By the way, this is the 10th time. I really don't know how many times it will happen again. This guy. What do you mean the 10th time? Maureen asked curiously. Oh, it's just that the house was blown into a ball. Lucas was able to escape successfully every time he committed a crime. Until now, we can't find any traces of him. I really hope that we can catch him next time. Then I won't bother you, Alton. Anderson hurriedly went to do other things. The 10th time? Has Lucas done this 10 times? Chapter 348 Next step. Maureen had been in school all the time, and he didn't know how many times the Ministry of Magic had dealt with this kind of thing. He thought carefully, and he saw Lucas committing crimes 3 times out of 10. The first time was during the summer camp, when Professor Adams's restaurant was destroyed. The second time was in the Muggle office building, when he accidentally stopped Lucas. The third time was in the Muggle Opera House. Maureen suddenly remembered a question. Whether it was the Muggle Opera House, the summer camp, or the Muggle office building, He had inexplicably run to a strange place and saw a group of strange people and monsters. He thought about it for a moment and found that every time he encountered a monster or a strange person, it seemed to be in the evening, when the sun was just about to set. That's right. The first time was on the day of summer vacation. He took a train from school to London for a day and came to the Muggle Opera House with Alton in the evening. The second time was in the summer camp. At that time, he took and ran to the top of a high branch to watch the sunset. When he came back, he met someone standing on a tree in the woods. The third time was also in the evening, in the Muggle office building. He met a little girl and an old woman. The old woman also told Maureen not to go out after dark. Dusk takes away the last ray of light, and darkness will descend on the world. The invisible man shuttles between light and darkness and becomes the guide of the messenger of God. Maureen suddenly remembered what Zimmerman said on the stage. This unclear sentence made him wake up a little now. What are you mumbling? Is there anything else you missed? Alton asked in confusion. Forbidden Forest. Maureen said. What Forbidden Forest? Lucas, he may go to the school's Forbidden Forest next. Maureen said with certainty. Last time Maureen was in the Forbidden Forest, he also ran to a place for 2 months and encountered those hideous monsters, and was chased by those monsters. It was also evening, after the sun went down, and he and Sweet were still groping in the Forbidden Forest for a while. Lucas should not have been to the Forbidden Forest yet, Sweet was sure of that, and Zimmerman deliberately condensed the sand into the Smoke Man in the Forbidden Forest, obviously to test Maureen's reaction. At that time, Zimmerman also condensed 12 other human figures, but other wizards did not see these except Maureen. Now Maureen is more and more certain that the Smoke Man in the depths of the Forbidden Forest is some kind of magic from the black box. Since Lucas is looking for the box, he will definitely find the Forbidden Forest of Hogwarts. How do you know? Because Maureen looked at his grandfather's puzzled expression, and then swallowed his words. His grandfather always worried about him, and he thought it would be better not to tell that he ran to the Forbidden Forest to save Anran. Maureen thought for a moment and said, Intuition, my intuition, the intuition after meeting Lucas. Intuition. Alton looked at Maureen suspiciously. I didn't know you had this intuition. Grandpa, you didn't know I could get second place in the Dumbledore Cup, did you? Maureen spread his hands. That's right. Alton finally smiled and stretched out his broad palm to touch Maureen's head. I'll tell Anderson later. After all, wizards' intuition is also a kind of magic. Sometimes it is very accurate. Anyway, they should pay a little attention to it. Yes, they really should pay attention to it. Professor Kane said solemnly after walking back from the abandoned place. He had just participated in the investigation of this big wall. The staff of the Ministry of Magic basically knew Professor Kane and respected him very much, so he was allowed to participate in this investigation. I have mentioned to them that there are several big pits in the school's Forbidden Forest. The small balls at the bottom of the big pits are also caused by the strange collapse magic, just like the big ball in the Muggle Opera House. Professor Kane said. With Professor Kane's eyesight, it was easy to associate the two things together. After all, there are few magics that can suck things into a solid ball. A small ball deep in the Forbidden Forest. Alton was not very clear about this matter. Professor Kane only mentioned to him last night that Maureen ran to the Forbidden Forest, and he did not tell him some details. Did Maureen tell you? Professor Kane asked in confusion. Maureen quickly winked at Professor Kane, begging Alton not to know about this. Tell me what? Alton looked at Maureen again. Maureen quickly pretended to be nonchalant and showed a very innocent smile. It's just... Professor Kane was still very considerate. He knew that Maureen didn't want Alton to worry. Thinking of Maureen's performance in the Dumbledore Cup this time, he made up for his mistakes and concealed it for him. He told Alton about the Forbidden Forest in general. When explaining to Alton, he did not mention that Maureen ran into the Forbidden Forest alone. The tone was as if he just happened to take Maureen to the Forbidden Forest to see the big pit to broaden his horizons. So that's how it is. Alton nodded slightly. The place in the Forbidden Forest may be caused by Lucas, or it may not be. We will keep a close eye on this matter, and the people. Professor Kane looked at Maureen meaningfully. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Maureen sighed and felt that she was really innocent. We should go back. Professor Kane called Magatha back from there. At this time, the staff of the Ministry of Magic had already begun to wave their wands to decompose the large stone balls that had collapsed together, and then use the restoration magic to restore the Muggle Opera House to its original appearance. Listen to the professor and don't make trouble again. I will let Professor Kane help keep an eye on you. If you don't behave, I will write a letter to punish you to copy sentences. Alton solemnly admonished Maureen. Maureen nodded, pretending to be serious. Oh, Alton, he's not afraid of being punished to write sentences. Professor Kane said with a smile, I will punish him to look at the stars and draw astrological charts with Professor Sinistra every night. Maureen's astronomy is terrible, so it's a good opportunity for him to learn more. Hey, that's too much? Professor. Maureen was shocked. Professor Kane's threat was too lethal to Maureen. If it was just looking at the stars, it would be fine, but the problem is that he has to draw those astrological charts, which is simply a torture for him. He was criticized by Professor Sinistra every time he had an astronomy class last year. Until now, he was too lazy to say anything to Maureen and let him fend for himself. He probably gave up on Maureen. Every time he looked at Maureen, he looked at him with a very unfriendly look. Especially at the beginning of this semester, when Professor Sinistra learned that Maureen had excelled in every course last semester except for passing in astronomy, he deliberately kept Maureen and asked him earnestly, Maureen, do you have any opinions about me? Maureen looked innocent. He really had no opinions. Professor Kane obviously knew better than Alton what things would really make Maureen feel scared. Although he didn't know why Maureen was such a chicken in astronomy, he thought that counting stars in the astronomy tower with Professor Sinistra every night must be the thing Maureen disliked the most. Studying astronomy? That's a better idea. Alton nodded, very happy with Professor Kane's suggestion. Then I'll leave him to you. Professor Kane, please ask me to say hello to Professor Sinistra. What to ask? Professor Sinistra is very good at counting stars every day, but I may not be able to join in the fun. Maureen complained in his heart. He already regretted telling Professor Kane about his own affairs. Alton still had to deal with things here. Maureen followed Professor Kane with a helpless look on her face and left here. She returned to Diagon Alley, where she met up with the others. Then, at Webberry's request, they went to the Greedy Witch restaurant again. In the afternoon, the group operated directly to Hogsmeade Village and returned to school. Chapter 349 Symbols. I read the newspaper. A black magic monster is rampant. Did you fight the monster? Hugo was secretly reading the newspaper under his desk during the Transfiguration class on Tuesday. He had no intention of listening to the class. Maureen told Hugo about it when he came back last week, but he didn't tell him many things in detail. Oh, almost. Maureen tried to be humble. It was basically solved by Professor Kane. In fact, the monster was solved by Doi, but Hugo probably wouldn't believe it even if Maureen told him, because Hugo hasn't seen what Doi looks like until now, and hasn't even touched Doi. Doi is quite arrogant and doesn't like anyone to touch her except Maureen. If I meet that monster, I don't know what to do. I will just set it on fire. Hugo exclaimed. Professor Kane is really amazing. Oh, thank you, Hugo. Professor Kane waved his wand and floated a piece of homework paper in front of Hugo. On it was Hugo's Transfiguration homework, with an F written in red in the upper right corner. If you can talk less in class and study more seriously, you don't have to redo last weekend's homework. Professor Kane said. Hugo opened his mouth. He failed the Transfiguration homework last week. Professor, can't you be flexible? I praised you. Hugo cried. I thanked you too. Professor Kane glanced at Hugo and said unhappily, is it because Maureen didn't do his homework last weekend that you can't do it? Does Maureen have to make up for it? Hugo asked pitifully. He doesn't need to. This kind of homework is meaningless to him. Professor Kane knocked on the blackboard again. Okay, everyone start practicing fruit transfiguration. Before the get out of class ends, I hope to see the second person turn the papaya into coconut. Professor Kane specially praised Maureen's second place in the Dumbledore Cup in class, but this also meant that Professor Kane's requirements for the second grade were higher. He insisted that if Maureen could do the transfiguration, others should be able to do it too. This made Hugo very distressed. He still had the apple peel when he turned the apple into an orange. Hugo pulled the homework paper dejectedly, leaned over and whispered, you will help me, right? I will help you tonight. Maureen lowered her head and drew 12 patterns on the paper. These were the 12 sand figures that Zimmerman transformed last Saturday. They had these 12 patterns on their foreheads. Maureen drew them down. Are you practicing drawing? Hugo looked at the 12 patterns and said in surprise, hey, this is not the one we saw last semester. Yes, the one we saw last semester, a very strange pattern. Maureen nodded. Last semester, he saw Grindelwald's Deathly Hallows pattern, Wolfgang Rakenlov's pattern, and Paingard's pattern on Hugo and others' backs. There is no Death Eater mark of Voldemort. Hugo said. That's right, so it's hard to be sure whether this matter is related to the pattern on your back. Maureen nodded. Among the 12 marks, 4 represent the marks of the 4 schools of Hogwarts. The other 3 have been seen last semester. Maureen is not very clear about the remaining 5. He only knows that one of them is from the smoke monster of the Forbidden Forest. Have you asked Professor Kane? I asked, and he said he would check, and he hadn't seen some of the patterns before. Maureen thought for a moment and said, by the way, I really should learn to draw. He had been putting this off until now, because he couldn't draw, and it was hard for him to draw the old witch he saw. It would be great if Professor Charles was still here. He would definitely be happy to teach you drawing skills. Hugo said. Maureen thought of Professor Charles, who had been searching for Paingard's paintings all over the world, and didn't know where Professor Charles was now. It's okay, isn't there a painting club? I can go ask, maybe they will teach me. Maureen thought of last year's club recruitment meeting, when a Ravenclaw student was drawing an eagle, and he was very impressed. He didn't know when this year's club recruitment meeting would be held. Or go to the library to find some books to learn by yourself. Anyway, drawing requires more practice by yourself. Hugo suggested. Maureen stared at the patterns and fell into deep thought. When the get out of class was about to end, Professor Kane praised Maureen again with great joy. It is not easy to get the second place in the Dumbledore Cup, not to mention that you are a second-year student. No one in our school has received this honor for several years, so I hope that everyone can ask Maureen for help with any transfiguration questions. Professor Kane glanced at Hugo, who was peeking at the newspaper below, and waved his wand to confiscate Hugo's newspaper. Especially you, Hugo, you haven't turned into complete orange yet. I used to hear a saying called the closer you are to the redder you are. You are with Maureen all day long, and I don't see you blushing. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Yes, Professor, you see, I blushed. Hugo pretended to be ashamed. The bell rang, and Maureen ran to the podium. Professor Kane was packing up the lesson plan. Professor, have you found anything about these 12 patterns? Maureen asked. Professor Kane put down the book, glanced at the pattern on Maureen's paper, and then pointed to one of the patterns and said, of the 12 patterns you have, except for the 4 from the 4 Hogwarts schools and the other 3 you mentioned, Professor Binns said he had seen this pattern. The pattern that Professor Kane pointed to was a circle with triangles inlaid in it. What is it? Maureen asked hurriedly. I'm not sure about this. You know that Professor Binns is too old. He only remembers the previous history of magic courses now. His memory of other aspects is terrible. Otherwise, he wouldn't have forgotten to bring his body to class before. Professor Kane shook his head helplessly. He only said that he might have seen this pattern somewhere, but he forgot where it was. Maureen was a little disappointed. Professor Binns was a ghost professor. The reason he became a ghost was because he dozed off in the common room one day and died without knowing it. After he died, he realized that he had classes to go to, so he didn't go down like other wizards after they died, but rushed back to teach students, and then turned into a ghost. He decided to wait until the history of magic class to ask Professor Binns if he remembered anything. By the way, you should behave yourself. Stop thinking about other things and breaking school rules to sneak out to investigate these patterns, otherwise you know what will happen. Professor Kane waved his wand, wiped off the writing on the blackboard, and said with a smile, Professor Sinister may be in the astronomy tower, accompanying you to watch the meteor shower. Maureen smiled dryly twice. Chapter 350 12 Patterns. The next day, when Maureen was taking history of magic, she waited until after class to go with Hugo to ask Professor Binns about the pattern. Professor Binns was clumsily organizing his notes, and he didn't look very energetic. Maureen handed over her parchment with 12 patterns on it, and turned it over to face Professor Binns. Professor, please tell me, do you remember the origin of this pattern? Maureen pointed to the pattern of a triangle embedded in a circle. What? Who are you? Professor Binns looked at Maureen for a long time on the podium. He looked a little confused and spoke with a wheezing sound like an old vacuum cleaner working. Harry Potter. I'm not Harry Potter, Professor. My name is Maureen Walker. Maureen said, and thought about it again. He felt that he needed to add, I am a sophomore student. It's November 2020. Oh, Walker. Professor Binns nodded slightly. He blew hard into a pile of students' homework papers, and a piece of parchment floated out. Then he said in a muffled voice, "If you see Harry Potter, give this homework to him and tell him to revise it." He confused the evil man Murick and the weird man Urick. "Professor, Harry Potter has graduated," Maureen reminded. "Then who is this?" Professor Binns handed the parchment to Maureen in a daze. Maureen glanced at the homework paper and was a little amused. "This is Lily Potter's homework." "Lily Potter? Does Harry Potter have a sister?" Professor Binns asked in confusion. Maureen quickly helped Professor Binns to sort out the relationship between the two. Hugo chuckled on the side. Maureen wanted to ask about the pattern again, but Professor Binns had already passed through the wall and left. "It's unbelievable that the professor who teaches us is such a confused one," Hugo couldn't help saying after leaving the classroom. "Isn't the knowledge he teaches us on weekdays all made up?" "That's not the case. He has a very thorough study of the history of magic, is well informed, and has clear ideas during class, except that the voice in class is too dry," Maureen said pertinently. "Oh my God. You actually listen carefully to a class like the history of magic?" Hugo was shocked. The history of magic is a course used to make up for sleep. With Professor Binns' dry, lullaby-like voice, many students slept soundly, and Hugo was the happiest one. "Some things still need to be listened to. He explains it more clearly than the textbook." Maureen and Hugo turned a corner and walked along the crowded corridor towards the classroom for the next class. Professor Binns just can't tell the students' names apart. Maybe he has seen too many students. I don't know when he died. I guess he was the professor with the longest teaching time. It should be hundreds of years, right? No one knows when Professor Binns died. Many students said that they didn't realize they were dead. He won't remember the students' names. That's meaningless for a ghost who is older than everyone else. But Harry Potter is also a rich biography in the history of magic. How could he make a mistake? Hugo was a little skeptical. He should treat reality and the history in the magic book differently, right? Maureen guessed. This is very important for ghosts. Ghosts exist longer than anyone else. If people who care too much about reality have to see off the people they know every time, it is not a happy thing, so it is better to let reality go to hell. Maureen and Hugo walked into the charms classroom together. Maureen found Lily and handed over the history of magic homework to her. Then he walked to the back rows to grab the seats at the back. This has become their routine. "Did you say last time that you were the only one who could see these 12 patterns?" Hugo asked, staring at the patterns on Maureen's paper. "Yes, Zimmerman turned the sand into these people in front of everyone, but everyone seemed to be oblivious to these human figures." Maureen looked at the patterns one by one, and then landed on the patterns of the Deathly Hallows and the Wolf King Love. "I asked Professor Kane. They didn't see these patterns, otherwise the symbols of Grindelwald and the Wolf King Love alone would be enough to cause a riot." "That's really strange," Hugo muttered. Sweet walked in from outside the classroom. He usually liked to stay in the corner of the back row of the classroom. When he passed by Maureen and Hugo's desk, he nodded and greeted them. "Oh, by the way, Sweet." Maureen thought of the Dumbledore cup, and said, "That guy showed up a few days ago." Sweet stopped, his face darkened, and asked, "Where's he?" "On the Dumbledore cup," Maureen said, and asked Hugo to take out the newspaper for Sweet, but it's a pity that he escaped again, in front of everyone. He was very clever. Sweet pursed his lips. He hated Lucas very much because Lucas took away his sister's consciousness in the orphanage. He always wanted to find Lucas. The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. "I will definitely catch him." Sweet picked up his school bag sullenly, and when he was about to walk to the seat at the back, his eyes swept across Maureen's spell book, and he saw the parchment with 12 patterns on it, and his face suddenly changed. "What's wrong?" Maureen asked curiously. Sweet stared at the paper closely, with some doubt in his eyes. "What is this?" "Oh, when I met Lucas that day, I saw these 12 strange patterns, which should be related to something." Maureen found that Sweet's eyes were not right, and he asked again, "Do you recognize these patterns?" "Ping, Grindelwald and Wolf King Love." Sweet's eyes flickered a few times, then he looked away and sat down behind Maureen. "Yes, I forgot that you were also the one chosen by Ping last semester." Hugo turned his head with a smile. "The mark of the Wolf King, Love, is still on your back, right? This is not something to be joked about, Hugo." Sweet opened his school bag expressionlessly and took out the spells textbook. Don't be depressed all day long. Peeing won't come to school again anyway. Hugo was very optimistic. Not necessarily. Maureen said, he thought of the smoke monster in the Forbidden Forest. I have a hunch that Lucas may come to Hogwarts at some point. I have confirmed that he is controlled by peeing. It would be best if he comes. Sweet snorted heavily. If he doesn't come, I will go find him. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.